Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Five Numbers. Joining me as he always does is Duncan Thorin Shields. He's already in the thinking Thorin face. We've actually got that on my Discord. That's
really
perfect.
Is that an emote?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've been using your image without you express permission, Duncan. You'd be pleased to know.
It's all right.
So,
I'm not so scoots or anything, so I won't make a big deal out of it.
It's good to know you selectively enforce that stuff. Anyway, we got Sam pressing the buttons. Sam, talk on your mic if you would.
Hello.
It's just sounding weird again. You sound like a grown up.
Sound like a normal person.
Yeah. I think it's whenever I play the intro, you probably sound like I hear a really robot version of me, so it probably sounds weird before the show. But then once it starts,
you just sound like a normal grown up now, and not some weird Welsh boy living in the
try
cave,
my best to fix it,
buttons,
mate.
doing bong hits. Yeah, if you can get back to what you used to.
I'll wrap
I think he's also just lost a bit of that passion, you know.
I think
started, you know, when he was hungry.
Yeah.
When he was a hungry button presser,
Exactly.
when he was out to get it.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, I remember when I first met Sam, and he was always up for stuff. Sam used to come and he used to suggest stuff to me. Duncan, he used to say, "Oh, let's do a short day. Let's do this." Never hear from the cunt now, of course. He just.
Yeah, I asked you the other day to do something, and you were like, "Hey, money."
Yeah, there you go.
Where's my 50% of the money? That's all I hear from him. And now he doesn't even sound like that. He just goes, "Where's my 50% of the money?" It sounds like mad deep voice.
I know.
It's just ridiculous. Yeah, just a deep, smooth voice from nowhere. Anyway, obviously, speaking of money, shout out to the sponsor, .com, where you can go to beepwith9es.com because we have to beep it out for YouTube. So if you're watching it on YouTube and you're wondering what that's about, that's every time I say Sam has to beep it. So you're going to say you're going to earn your fucking money this month, motherfucker. So yeah, you can go to beep.com, but they're a great sponsor to have if you like placing bets on esports events. Go to they're fantastic, and we're super honored to have as a sponsor. So make sure you support. Right, let's jump in. There's lots to talk about. We haven't done a show for a while because I've been a little bit under the weather, but we must persevere onwards and upwards, as they say. So let's start by talking about the constant comical nonsense that's been going on over in Astralis.
And maybe the TSM of CSGO for just giving us constant content during these last few weeks.
No, I have got to say, like, thank you, Astralis, for all you've done. Where would this show be without you in a lot of ways? So look, in case you missed it, previous week we were just discussing the sort of absurdity of a 7-man roster because they added Yugi and Esatag now to the Astralis team, and there was talk about.
And then they were like, "Shit, they're buying this. Fuck, do the next plan, I guess." Like what is it? Nico with a C coming back now? What the fuck's happening now?
We're getting fetish is
I know,
coming in.
But the level of credulity at this point in time, I can't believe we're just going beyond this now. This is mental. We're all just accepting this and having real conversations like they actually want these players. It's mental.
Oh, I know. Well, yeah, we just have to pretend this was all part of the plan all along.
Until everyone just laps it up, though, and they're like, "Yeah, what do you think, Thorin? 7-man rosters, the future of the game." Like, what? This is real life. Like, has no one been checking who the person pulling those strings are? This is just like chapter 7,000 in the machinations of Uncle Nikolie.
Yeah, no, it's absurd. We'll get to that. But basically, what's happened now? They announced that Glaive, the in-game leader, will be out of action for 3 months based on doctors' advice for suffering from symptoms of stress and burnout, that medical condition. And that means that they're bringing in Yugi to sort of fill his considerably sized shoes. They put a statement out, which I'll just read now. Saying, for a long time, we've worked with Lucas and the team to minimize the tasks inside and outside of the game. This has helped, but unfortunately has not been enough for him to avoid going on leave. I know that there are many players out there in situations similar to Lucas's, and though you might say we should have taken this step a long time ago, it is my hope that we can avoid a similar situation in the future. I am obviously looking forward to having Lucas back 100%, but right now he needs to rest. We will support him in any and all ways possible. I mean, we're going to start picking this apart. I guess let's just start with the sort of roster
Surface
move in and
level.
of itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the surface level stuff, exactly. Let's do that first. This is hugely worrying for Astralis. I mean, we're going into a period of the year where hopefully the pandemic stuff's starting to ease off. We're going to be heading towards, Q3, and maybe some tournaments are coming back. I mean, there's still all that online stuff. We'll talk about Road to Rio a little bit in a moment. But the problem, obviously, that Astralis have got is now they're going to be doing it not just without a great player, one of the sort of incredible starting lineup that they've had for the past 2 years, but arguably the most instrumental piece, the in-game leader, and they've been practicing with Magisk.
Yeah, I saw that was actually put out there in the community by what's functionally an anonymous account, so we don't need to mention who it was. So, see, we can play this game all day long, boys. If you think I'm not petty, you haven't been following my career.
So there's been talk about Magisk maybe going to be the guy that stands in. I don't think Yugi's obviously going to be the like for like swap. I don't think Yugi's going to be coming in as IGL. So this is really bad news for Astralis fans. I mean, they were already having a rough 2020 with the starting 5 lineup. They didn't look like their old selves. They were stumbling in some series, and now with this, you've got to start wondering if it's kind of the end of Astralis as we knew it.
Yeah, and let's just jump on one thing that I've seen almost no one comment on, which is, I think, and this is one of those stories where the fact that Glaive came out and essentially said, I'm on medical leave now, I really need to do it, means that, listen, no one begrudges Astralis then having to let him go. That makes perfect sense, that if he really has to go, he's suffering these conditions. Yeah, we wouldn't want him to have to play through that. But one angle I don't get that everyone else is just cool with is this just shows you how winning just cures everything, Richard, and just changes everything. People believe any transformation as long as you lift enough gold trophies above your head. Everyone else is just cool with the idea that Magisk is an IGL now. A guy who is literally the youngest member, a guy who was an absolute fucking rage head, whose head would swell up and go fucking orange like some shit out of that one of those, what was that fucking fried green tomatoes or whatever the fuck that from outer space? That was the fucking straight 90s reference.
Fried green tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe was sort of a wonderful slice of life.
The two together.
Yeah, it was a wonderful slice of life drama about little old ladies, wasn't it?
So I'm Joe Biden now. I'm just mashing together two things that were related to tomatoes in some way and otherwise not in any way related. So anyway, first of all, that doesn't give me faith that Astralis can be anything like the old Astralis. They've got enough good players. They don't have to be. You can play a different style, obviously. You can still be good. But I agree with you on that central point. I mean, let's be real. When they had Kirby in their team, they literally didn't have Device for 2 out of 3 tournaments at the end of a year once. They still looked awesome, even without Device, the best player of their team. Because the point is, Glaive is fucking Astralis. At least what you think of as Astralis. That's Glaive, that's Zonic, and then the other players are extensions of that, and certainly collaborators. But I agree, the artist behind the painting that is Astralis is Glaive. So without him, it's not even just that Astralis gets worse. It's just they're not Astralis to me. And really, you are, because he says he's coming back. You're just waiting on that timer for when he comes back. And then there's another part that people really don't seem to have considered, which is he implies he's going to be back. And I think he says roughly as well 3 months or something. I think obviously that's supposed to coincide with perhaps when the major could happen. But another area people are ignoring is if he really doesn't play CS at all, you don't just step back in the game like that and be on top of your peak of your powers. Listen, if there was someone could do it, I wouldn't put it past him, but that could be an uphill challenge in itself. You could have to really grind to get back in the game. So I agree with you. As much as it's not a scenario where I have much blame for Astralis beyond some of the other things we might talk about later, certainly a circumstance where their hand's somewhat forced, but I can't see it being good in any way. I don't even really see the angle where Yugi and Esatag kind of prove themselves to be a bit better than you expect, and somehow that reinvents Astralis. I kind of feel like this will just be a waiting game of when does the real Astralis turn up again? That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure it's going to. I've got my suspicions about what's actually going on here, which I suppose we'll delve into. But just first off, I've got to say that there is something that is inherently devaluing when you go from being, the best team in the world by some considerable distance, and you are picking up players that literally couldn't tie down a place in also ran rosters that were operating sort of at the low end.
I think you're lagging too much, mate. Is he lagging for you a lot, Sam?
The video's lagging, but the audio isn't. That's why.
Right, keep going then. That's fine.
Could you hear me?
Yeah, I hear
Did you hear me, Duncan? All right. So yeah, I'll just repeat the point. And
Hang on, I'll change the server again.
Yeah, go on, do that.
While we're on a break, anyway.
Yeah, there we go. The camera looks perfect.
There we go.
Right. There we are. Well, give it 2 seconds. I'm sure it'll fuck up in a bit. The joy of Discord. Don't you miss Skype, guys? Aren't you nostalgic for Skype these days? I know I am. Anyway, so yeah, look, I think there's something inherently devaluing to the kind of Astralis as a brand and the team by extension, where you start bringing in players that couldn't tie down a spot in teams that were at the lower end of the top 20 or outside of the top 20. Seems to me to be absolutely absurd to suggest that, yeah, we can send Glaive on leave. Maybe there'll be another player go on leave. Maybe Device needs some leave. We know he's been battling with health problems for a while. And you're going to bring in Yugi and Esatag? Well, listen, even if you kept 3 of Astralis, dropped Glaive, brought in, had Magus go as IGL and brought in Esatag and Yugi, that team's not, that's not a top 10 team. That's not a top 10 team. That's terrible. That's an objectively bad team. Not to mention the fact that they're going to have to go through all the rigmarole of learning everyone's shit. And I'm sure they're not really doing what they say they're doing publicly. They say they're practicing and swapping people in and out. If you're doing that, you've lost your mind. You took too much fucking DMT. Why would you do that?
That's like an Anders idea for Astralis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sure Anders probably did suggest that at some point. Well, huffing a fucking ether rag. Like, what if it's madness? It's a waste of everyone's time. And as I said, I think it really does devalue what Astralis is meant to be, and this sort of the best team in the world, nowhere near with these players put in. So I don't understand how they're going to try and sell this. Like, why not? Like, if you knew all along that Glaive was going to take 3 months out, why Yugi and Esatag? Why not go and get yourself a serious, option? That probably, honestly, money you're spending on Esatag and Yugi, you probably could get one competent player for that.
Mate, bear in mind, they're implying, this is the whole problem that we're going to run into as we start to unravel this, is, as usual, the lies they've said is what sets up the rest to be sinister. Like, there was no problem with them taking all those tournaments off last year in theory, but the fact they had to lie to you and tell them that you were doing it for different reasons and not to prop up Blast, that's my problem. So here's the big problem here. As you say, if this really was a real 6th and 7th man to the roster that's going to be part of the campaigns in the future, potentially can swap out for any player, etc. Well, you can already see the players in the scene that were available. You could have had Tessus and Far, like these players from Copenhagen Flames that get picked up. There was talent in the scene. You could legitimately have brought on that, but would make it a real thing where, as you say, the big problem is this. When I see the Astralis name, because I think of what the players accomplished, that still means a lot. There's prestige around that brand like very few others in this game. So the idea that Yugi gets to just like trip over down 10 flights of stairs of failure and then just get into it, that's not cool. That's fucking whack, man.
Yeah. Well, I watched your video that you put out the other day. What was it called? A 7-man distraction, I think.
Yes.
It was called. So I guess you can elucidate on the points that you made there.
Yeah,
but
sure.
basically, you think there is something a little bit untoward and almost dare I say unethical about sort of demanding that people take a pay cut and then kind of bringing in additional players on presumably the sort of full salary they would have commanded in the marketplace anyway.
Well, this is the beauty of the way that Nikolie Lieholm and Astralis lie, which is because just like ESL and my boy Carmack, they always have to over-egg the pudding of the lie. And they have to make the lie so absolute that they think they've performed some alchemical, magical operation of taking absolute shit and turning it into the most brilliant, radiant gold in the universe. But of course, as soon as you dig into it, you find that that's just foil. It's just shit underneath. And then as a result, the expectation contrasted with the reality is so staggering that you have to, at the end, come away and start asking questions like, when does it become immoral to just lie to people over and over again? And then crucially, this is where they always make the mistake. They always paint themselves into the corner. So I'll give you 2 alternatives, right? Alternative number 1, things are as Astralis claim. These are a real 6th and 7th man to their team. They are going to have a roster with 6 or 7 people who will replace real top salaried players in the game. And in that case, they will receive a similar salary, right? Because that would only be appropriate for a real 6th and 7th man. Maybe not as much. Maybe it could even be 70% as much, 60%, depending on how much you play, right? That would be appropriate. In that scenario, it's now absolutely, I would say almost morally objectionable to have asked people in your company, including other staff that might not even be players, to have taken a salary cut, telling them you need that money to run the business in a healthy manner and then sign other people to high salaries. That's literally stealing from Peter to pay Paul. That is that scenario. Alternately, here's number 2. Let's say, but Thorin, that's so cynical. Maybe what Astralis did is they got a good deal from Yugi and Esatag. You know, they were stuck in shit teams or nowhere. So what they're really doing, Thorin, is don't be an idiot. They're just paying them like $1,000 a month. Well, in that case, by lying and saying they're real 6th and 7th players, you've now broken the precedent of what Astralis player-owned organization would mean. You have now fucked someone. So who have you fucked? Was it Esatag and Yugi, or was it the other people within your company who do the fucking day-to-day heavy lifting of being Astralis, a company that is a sub-company of the Astralis group? Like, that's the point. I mean, they even intimated with the salary cuts, by the way, that people in fucking the League of Legends team are taking cuts, and then you're adding extra players to your... So the point here is one of those two must be true, and in either scenario, someone was lied about, someone was probably lied to, and someone was fucked over.
I've got my own theory about this.
All right.
You know, listen, I think all of those concerns are valid. I think there's definitely something that needs to be explored there, just in terms of, what is the kind of morality around making a very big public show about how we're taking the pandemic seriously. Even a big team, a publicly floated team like us on the Danish NASDAQ or whatever it is, we're having to cut salaries. By the way, we're bringing in 2 players as well. And I don't know if it's linked to this, but I want you to imagine a scenario, right? Because as soon as I hear a player is going on sick leave for X amount of time, you know, my bullshit detector goes off. Because when a player is legitimately
as opposed to
ill,
definite, that's the key thing, right?
Yeah. When a player is legitimately ill or sick, with an issue that will require them to have time off, you generally say take some time out and take as long as you need, right? I mean, that's the responsible thing to say.
Even that phrasing, take as long as you need, is the famous thing you always say, of course.
Yeah, take as long as you need, provided you can. I mean, you know, there's obviously exceptions. You know, I've done this many times. Like I say, in a past life, I used to be an office manager. So, you know, when you're managing a long-term sick employee, there does come a point where you go, listen, we've supported you in all of these ways. You are going to have to get back to some, you know, to work, light duties, whatever it is. But we do require that you come back, or we're probably going to have to think about terminating your contract. That's the nature of the beast. Now, what I see with happening in Counter-Strike is there's no need to put a time limit down if you bring in a replacement for a player, right? There's no need to publicly put out an amount of time. You just say Glaive's taking some time away from the roster, right? Why 3 months? So then I started thinking about a scenario where, I don't know. Let's say, for example, there was a player on a roster, right, that had been asked to take a pay cut or had a contract negotiation coming up. And the organization said, or rather the player said, well, I don't want this shit contract, or I don't want to take a pay cut.
Or even they just can't pay the payroll that month.
Yeah, right? And they turn around and go, well, you've only got 3 months left anyway, so we're going to bring in ringers. Fuck you. And they can save money. And let's say, for example, like a lot of contracts have, you, by going into sick leave or going onto the substitutes roster, you lose like 50% of your salary, 70% of your salary. So you actually fuck yourself in terms of how much money you get by holding steadfast, because you don't think they'll drop you. And they do, and then they bring in some dog shit players. And then let's say that org then publicly frames it that not only you going onto the substitutes bench is what you wanted and is actually good for you, and they say, but it's only going to be 3 months, at which point your contract will have expired and negotiations will be completely afresh. And in the meantime, we don't have to worry. There's not like there's any big tournaments to go and play at. It's all online for the foreseeable. So it's actually the perfect time to throw in some dog shit ringers to make a point. And I'm not saying that's what's gone on with Astralis, but none of this makes sense. There is something afoot, and I just don't know what it actually is. But there is something very weird about saying our in-game leader is going to be on sick leave for exactly 3 months. By the way, here is a dog shit player that's not fit to lace his shoes going to be stepping in. And we're doing it because we're the good guys. Nah, I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. I didn't buy it when Alex said, "Oh, I don't want to." The stress of being a Counter-Strike pro and traveling is too much for me, so I must stand down from this roster. I'm not retiring enough, and I'll definitely be back there. Yeah, see. You know what I mean? Like the first part sounds great if you are interested in narrative.
Yes.
But what comes next, the reality of it, doesn't align with that narrative. So what is actually going on?
I've also seen this happen a lot in other esports games. The most famous example is anyone who knows Dota 2 and how the Chinese teams behave. It is infamous that the teams who place the highest at TI, because most years your aim is to have another good run at TI, what they do is, if they want to get out of their contract with that team, they retire, just wait the extra months that their contract would have had, or get released immediately. Like, you know, you wait a month, and then the org goes, well, it'd be kind of mean to just keep him on the contract. So just say he's released. And then literally like a month later, they just sign with a new team, and they're suddenly, you know, they always spin a lie. I found my motivation again, my passion, you know, I needed to play with this guy before. But it's just a move. It's just a cynical move. And I've always thought personally, by the way, that one's actually quite disgusting from the players. Like, how dare you like show such contempt to your actual career that you'd imply you really did retire when it was just to get out your contract. Like, I've always thought that was fucked as well. So all these scenarios, sadly, are people trying to like get a little extra edge in a negotiation and how to deal with their contract. As you say here, playing fastball, like there's a world in which this is, to give the equivalent, this is Glaive pulling a Le'Veon Bell from the Steelers, and he's just going, right, you can't get rid of me, can you? I'm one of the best players. If you want to be relevant, you're going to need me, right? And then you have the cat and mouse of the org plays chicken with you, basically. I probably shouldn't have mix my metaphors there because now it sounds fucked, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, so I'm not saying anything is going on in this instance. It might be just as basic as, Glaive's burnt out and needs some time off, right? It might be that simple. But if it isn't, and I guess the reason I would even suspect that it isn't is because it comes from an organization that's run by a guy with just such a long record of fuckery. Like it's always smoke and mirrors. It's never what they say it is. Never. I can't think of an instance actually where it's been the way Nikolie and I.
Dude, even from the genesis of the org, with it being a player-owned org, it's like it was a lie from day one. In fact, I even made this point in my video. The craziest thing about Nikolie Lieholm is this: because he's not talking to you and me, who would immediately be like, well, you're full of shit on that. That doesn't make sense. He's talking to just the random unwashed masses who just read PR statements and go, well, I like Astralis, so it must be true. And so when he talks to these people, he actually does you and me a favor, which is that, you know, whatever he gives us the real reason definitely isn't the real reason. So you can eliminate that immediately, and you can start by process of elimination, figuring out what he might be doing. Like, for example, if he tells you, and I'll just take out this handkerchief, you know, to look at the right hand immediately. Don't look at that. That's obviously the distraction. Now, an idiot's going to go, but what about what you said? No, that's the whole point. And so the crazy thing is, like, without giving it, right, here's the analogy I would give. Like, there's certain TV shows, American, like, procedural dramas, that I had to stop watching because eventually I'd watched enough of them that I could literally tell you things like, right, so it says that it's guest starring a famous actor, right? Well, he's definitely going to probably be the murderer, right? It shows you that a person committed the crime in the first 10 minutes. Well, there's no way they'd give that up immediately. Like, you can actually start, unfortunately, to figure out, like, you notice a character gets introduced bizarrely around 1/3 of the way through the show who seems to immediately disappear. He's going to have to be relevant later on. Like, these factors, when you actually start to notice them, ruin the show for you because you start just going, this is obvious. Everyone else is just caught up in it going, no, but if you go from step A to B, this is cool, isn't it? Like, where's it going? It's like that with Astralis. Like, it's almost gotten actually like inane and fucking mundane to deal with these lies because it's always just like, and the other thing as well is the angle is always the same every time. It's always to help Nikolie Lieholm. It's never to help Nikolie Lieholm and whoever's with him. He'll only do that if he has to align his interests with them. He'll even fuck over the people who work with him, as far as I can tell, and seems to have done so repeatedly, not least, by the way, with their fucking reputations. Because like I said at the end of that video, the saddest thing to me about this MO, this behavioural pattern that we've seen now, is one day when this game is finished and CSGO, maybe Astralis brand goes into a future version of Counter-Strike, it won't be thought of as it is now. This incredibly prestigious brand who will accomplish the greatest things. It'll be thought of like Nip is. Because like I said, Nip was that brand. Nip were the gods. And now Nip is a fucking joke, even though those players aren't even the ones that did any of that shit.
It's a good comparison. And let's also be real. The long-term game plan for Nikolie Lieholm is to sell all of these brands.
Of course.
You know, he's not going to be sat as a wizened old man, you know, on his porch with a long, you know, white beard going, yep, the best thing I ever did was create Astralis and get into esports, changed my whole life. No. He's here today and he's gone tomorrow, right? So all of this stuff, like, which, and I think this was brought up last week when we were talking about them. All of this stuff that, like you say, the unwashed masses, and I guess to a larger extent, shareholders, people who've bought shares in Astralis without really knowing what they've bought, they're going to lap all this stuff up. It sounds incredibly professional, doesn't it? We're supporting our in-game leader and team captain with a 3-month hiatus. And look, we've brought in another professional Counter-Strike player from another team. But when you know all of the pieces that are in play and when you actually understand, you know, the difference in these players and the competency that we're talking about, the drop-off, this is actually, it reeks of mismanagement. And there's a broader debate that I want to have, and then we'll get talking into Road to Rio, and I can actually drop a bit of breaking news because it does tie into it. HLTV has just confirmed he's going to be stepping down from the FaZe clan roster. I do love as well, by the way, how you, like, I'm convinced we got given, like, the fucking keys to the simulation and no one told us, because you just did a video talking about fucking CS royalty.
Basically gobbling all the fucking sacred cows, yeah.
Yeah, and how HLTV had become one of those sacred cows and was in this unassailable position. Turns out the only person that could do for HLTV was HLTV. But anyway, he put out a brief statement, and he said, I've decided to take a break from Counter-Strike. During the last period, I felt increasingly fatigued, and that I have been losing the motivation needed to do myself, my teammates, and the FaZe brand justice. I still love the game and the scene, but I need to regain my motivation. I'm going to take some time off to recuperate and think about my future. I want to thank FaZe and all of my fans for all of the love and support. We'll meet again. Hashtag FaZe up, which I can never take seriously ever since that fucking 45-year-old man, Lee Twink or Lee Trundle or whatever his fucking name is, fucking did FaZe up in the middle of his midlife crisis. But anyway, we'll meet again. Hashtag FaZe up. HLTV. Reactions.
There was actually a bit more to that story, though. I don't know, you probably didn't see it. What happened was a fan with a FaZe logo replied to him and said, no, Olaf, you're wrong. You just play all the really hard spots and you're a really great communicator. And he goes, fuck, you're right, actually. Yeah, I'm just going to keep playing because nothing was wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. No, you mean actually he was on the brink of retirement because even he himself knew he was completely burned out. By the way, euphemisms there, I would guess probably mean wasn't playing CS much, didn't know where the team was going. Maybe he was going to let it ride initially. I imagine even the lockdown could have made him lose motivation to keep playing. This was probably his last go around. I mean, he's done that 2 or 3 times now, but you get it. You know, you get the principle. You work yourself up into a jazz for like one last playoff run, boys. And then all of a sudden you're playing online games every fucking day for 3 months. I could see how that could make someone just go, you know what? Now's as good a time as any. Time to step away. Makes perfect sense. I think it's the right time in his career. I mean, I would probably have suggested he do it earlier, but I can't know what's in his heart. Maybe he's one of those Neo and Taz guys who thinks any day he's going to reignite the flame and go to the top again. When people have done the incredible things these guys have done, I don't begrudge them the idea that they are the last to give up on the dream. Of course, they were the only ones, remember, who believed in themselves when they were on the way up. We all just jump on the bandwagon once we see they're super sick in game and the stats are fucking sick. They would never get to the place they are if they listen to everyone telling them, be realistic, son, you know, go into the family business like me. You'd never do it. So I think it generally, like as I mentioned in that video, he had become in the game basically a joke of who we used to be. And in fact, actually, I think was doing some harm to the name HLTV. Because if someone's only ever seen FaZe HLTV, you'll never know how amazing that player was. He was one of the best I've ever seen play any version of Counter-Strike. So I think it's just an appropriate time for everyone. I will say, though, this is how you put the ironclad stamp of approval. He was 100% CS royalty. Because when you're CS royalty, They don't kick you. You kick yourself. You just choose to retire. And as I always say, if you're either retiring not for health reasons or nobody asks you to join when you leave, you should have been kicked ages ago. That suggests actually that you were just like someone was protecting you somehow.
It's funny actually because I was doing a video for the other day, and one of the questions that came up was asking about Olaf Meister, and I basically said that listen, there are a lot of players that I consider to be washed and probably should take a step back or a step down in terms of the caliber of team they're playing on, because it's not fair to the people that need that opportunity on the come up. And I don't think Olaf and FaZe had been working for a while, frankly. But what I said is I think Olaf Meister, first of all, I do believe he can get back to some semblance of being the player he was, right? I do think. And by that, I mean, I don't think you ever see 2015 Olaf Meister again, obviously. But I think if he can get back to 65%, 70% of the player he was, that's fucking still sick. That's good enough to play in a lot of tier 1 teams.
Sure.
And I think his problem has been, like, FaZe is a great place to hide if you're, like, a former, #1 player in the world, and you're playing with Nico, and you're playing with coldzera, and you're playing with Rain, and obviously you got this young kid, Brokey, and you're just kind of looking around and going, well, if I go missing, someone does pick up the pieces invariably. Like, now FaZe haven't been amazing, but they've made incremental improvements ever since Brokey came into the roster. They've been getting a little bit better. And I still think they definitely needed a roster move. I think the space Olaf Meister occupied needs to go to somebody more competent. But just looking at it from Olaf Meister's perspective, I think he needs to be fucking needed. I think he needs to go play in a team where people are like, come on, mate, you're fucking Olaf Meister, dig us out of this fucking hole. He needs people looking to him to say, like, it is on you.
Man, I'll tell you the obvious team he should go to. Listen, you don't have to join the shady Nipog now. Go to Dignitas with those other guys that were all trying to reinvent the career. They'll put you in a star role if you want.
Yeah, I mean, it's a possible lineup. I mean, I would say as well, I don't think like Nip is like. I agree why obviously you might not want to go to that org in particular, but in terms of space on the roster, I could see him slotting in. And
they could use a vet.
Yeah, and I honestly do think though, I think he's somebody that once FaZe is behind him and that chapter is finally closed and he goes and plays on a Swedish team again and gets into that role where he's being relied upon, gets into a position where it's like, there isn't a Nico to fucking dig us out of this. I think slowly he'll get back to some semblance of what he used to be. And remember, it's not insane. It's not impossible because Crims did have that little bit of a drop off, didn't he? Look where he is now. Flusher, obvious. I mean, like what Fnatic are doing shows that if you've got true Counter-Strike class and caliber, you can definitely keep going way beyond what normal players can do. So. I hope he ends up on a roster where that talent is going to kind of like be empowered to come back to the top. But this is what I want to talk about. I'm worried now about the next thing that's going to be peddled because I've seen the CSPPA talking about it, and every org seems to be talking about it, and every player retirement seems to have it folded in. This idea of like mental health, burnout, and stress. I know that's all your face. You're like,
because I'm just so sick of this fucking veneer where you say one thing and mean another. It's just bullshit.
Yeah.
Like even in that exact scenario there, right? We need to have a talk about mental health illness any minute now. Do you want to start now? No, not today. I'm busy today, but we need, rather when I say we, I mean you need to have a talk about mental health. Why do I need to do that? You should, shouldn't you? You should take care. Like you are the CSPPA. Crazy idea for you guys. The people on that board. Put them around a fucking table, turn a mic on, and have them talk about mental health. How about they tell stories about what happened when they were on the road too much, or what it's like if you have to play a tournament format that lasts a month long, or what it's like if you go from China to Russia to North America to the major to the Why don't you do that? You have all the resources to do that. I don't have any pro players who live in my house. I have to ask you to come on the show, you fucking idiots. So as long as you have a webcam, a fucking Twitch channel, mouths, and a brain, like the last one, 3 out of 4 is not bad, but you can probably scratch something together. I'm so sick of that thing, Richard, because it smacks of woke capitalism again. It smacks of like, Listen, we here at the Verizon Wireless family care a lot about mental health. That's why for every 1,000 hours you call sex hotlines, we're going to give 1 cent to someone getting therapy somewhere in fucking Namibia. Like, yeah, I know what you wanted there. You wanted me to do the other thing that makes you the money, and then you'll just give a little bit of it away. Like, if you actually were genuine, if you were sincere, think of what a lot of people do when they do a charity effort. They say, I'm not going to make a profit from this. That's why you know it's legit. Or they say, you know what, I'll put myself out there. I'll be the first one to talk about mental illness. I'll be the first one to talk about how my mental health's been deteriorating. You don't just get together as a big group and go, smoke signals. There's a lot of mental health illnesses, but that's enough for me anyway. I'll see you later. You sort it out. What is this shit?
The thing with this, though, is like, right, why are we talking about it now? Because I'm pretty sure, like, a few years ago, if you were to go back and look through my videos, I'm the one saying the calendar's too packed.
Sure.
Events are fucking stacked on top of each other. The time, people are flying all around time zone. There's no work-life balance. Players are miserable. And I'm the one saying that, right? But now we're in a spot where it's like, fucking hell, there's barely enough games to fill the time, right? I mean, players seem to be
And we're all home with our families.
Yeah. It's like, don't get me wrong. Obviously, that being cooped up inside, if you're adhering to the quarantine, brings with it a sort of unique set of issues. Like, I mean, I've been losing, I'm not going to lie, I'm losing my fucking marbles. I'm pottering around the fucking house by myself. I've been doing it for fucking, like, I don't even know, like 10 weeks or something. It's crazy. I haven't had any sort of meaningful in-person human interaction for that period of time. And,
what was that time when we wrecked TSM and that, though? That was pretty good.
Yeah, that was pretty good. But obviously, I live in Vegas, so, I like to get hookers in every week. We're legal out here. You can't get me. Just timestamp it.
Why even put it in? Like,
obviously, you just meant you likes to duo queue with fresh players.
No, but that it ties into a meta joke, because only someone who's been cooped up alone by himself for 10 weeks would say something like that. You see, Sam, it's meta humor. It's meta humor. You wouldn't understand
in a video
Sam.
game.
You wouldn't exactly. You wouldn't understand, Sam, because you've grown up. You've turned into a full adult with a deep chocolatey voice. So anyway, why are we talking about it now? Why are all these players suddenly burnt out now when you have your least period of activity? And this is what I mean about, like, the sort of the hijacking of language, and like, oh, okay, people believe burnout now. People will fully subscribe to it. Glaive's burnt out. Olaf's burnt out. Everyone's burnt out. Every player here's what I'm worried about. Every player that's going to be standing down or getting cut from rosters burnt out. Just burnt out.
Be the new excuse.
Yeah, we were just burnt out. Just stressed and burnt out. So there's definitely, like, a valid topic to have, but it's not when people aren't traveling. It's not when people aren't playing. Now it just looks, maybe it's a good time to sort of lay some ground rules about what we can do moving forward. And yes, it is incredible that the CSPPA are like, we've got to talk, like, guys, be a fucking industry leader and start driving this conversation forward. It's quite telling, actually, in Counter-Strike, that the two prime examples I think we've got of people talking about, like, mental health issues are me and Anders on Trash Talk in 2014, and Red Eye talking about his own stuff. Yes. And James Banks in your like, you can pick, like, a handful of examples, and obviously that's just talking about talent, that's just talking about broadcasting, that's just talking about being a public facing entity. None of it is player specific, right? And I know players have gone through some insane shit, and I know orgs have put insane amounts of pressure on certain players down the years and done some pretty heinous stuff to them. Is that coming out now? Are we going to talk about that? Or are we going to just instead use this as an excuse to cut players that should have been cut ages ago? Are we having a serious conversation, or is it just bullshit?
This is like the Astralis thing again, because again, the thing that's objectionable is what you're using to disguise, to camouflage your real intention. It's something that is really important, that doesn't deserve to be treated with the contempt that it's just a fucking another ploy for you to do something in your career so that you don't look like the bad guy because you got kicked from a fucking team. Like, Everyone right now who wants to like brag about like mental health month or whatever, or how we need to have these really serious talks and be careful about our language so that people feel comfortable with their mental state. Don't ever let me see you interact with one of those clout chasing accounts that constantly mock autism then. Because if you do that, I won't think you're sincere, believe it or not. I'll think you fuck with that. I think that's what you ride with. That's what you think's funny. So with the same accounts that are saying this stuff now, will they be continuing to do all that stuff? Of course they will, because it was never really about that. Like, as I say, they haven't really actually, they haven't even begun the conversation. They just keep waffling about the fact we need the conversation. And by the way, we do, but why are the people who are in leadership positions not leading the way? Like I said it on Twitter, I will do it. I will get together players and have a discussion like this. I will try to stimulate this kind of conversation. I don't think I'll see a lot of it from the big woke companies that are doing it right now to seem cool. I imagine they'll say fuck all, just as usual. Like, I imagine massive TOs who will give the pat on the back and, you know, the equivalent of like the oil company who does all the fucking like, oh, we planted all these trees this month. It's like, right, are you looking into any way to get rid of all? Are we? I mean, not right at this time. You know, we have a very complicated industry. Like, in the same way, here's a crazy idea. How about all the TOs who feel for these players, all those Danish people from certain companies tweeting at Glaive? How about you sit down and figure out a way to figure out the schedule? How about you create some space for people like that? How about why does it have to be one player break? I made this point in my video. I think one of the two things we need to do is this. There either needs to be a true off-season, and I'm talking like 3 months, where you can just go away, you can go in a fucking log cabin if you want, like Henry Thoreau or whatever, come back out in 3 months later and start playing again. Or let's take it and split it up. Let's have 3 player breaks, each of them 3 weeks long before 2 of the majors and maybe in the middle of the season. So let's do it like that. Do one of these 2. Now, that's a real solution. I don't hear anyone else saying solutions. I hear people just vaguely mumbling that maybe the player break should be a bit longer, which who even knows what their motivations for that are. It might just be that Nico wants to spend another week in the Maldives. Like, maybe if he's spending all that fucking money, he wants to get his money's worth. You know, maybe it's some angle that, you know, they just want to have a longer summer holiday because it's always in the summer, isn't it? So, like, I just don't know how sincere people are when they bring this stuff up. And I don't consider this a joke. I don't consider it like some side topic, you know. I think it is an important thing. So if you're going to bring it up, do it in a sincere manner.
Yeah, like I said, I'm happy to also take part in that conversation when it happens. But I am sick and tired of it. Always has to be the same people that drive the fucking conversation, right? Like, why? It's like you said, why is it whenever there's a hot topic, it's always the same people that create sort of content around it or facilitate these conversations? When, you know, why in a time when we're all sat at home doing nothing, why isn't one of these big TOs just throwing on their stream, followed by hundreds of thousands of people just doing some content of some sort of significance and importance? What's that? You can't monetize it, so you're not going to do it. Oh, okay then. Right, well, me and Duncan, king of the bedroom broadcasters, will do it again. It's just silly. Like, it's like these people have the platforms, they have the resources, they have the capacity at any time to reach a bigger audience. So if a conversation is truly worth having, why don't the major stakeholders and the supposed industry leaders, why don't they start the conversation? I'll join in. I'll come along afterwards, right? But I'm just so above and beyond fucking having to be the one that sits down. And of course, you know what'll happen, right? Because I say social media has driven everyone mentally ill, and people will say, well, you can't have a conversation about mental illness because you use mental illness as an insult. Although I'm not insulting anybody by saying that. I genuinely believe it. Also, people do seem to think that mental illness can't in and of itself be malevolent, that your behavior can't be reprehensible as a result of your illness. Yeah, of course not. You know, so it's like
I'll tell you what, mate, there's another thing. When you're telling everyone, remember, some of these people are going to be an 18-year-old kid who's still a young pro. When you tell a guy like that, come on into the water, it's nice and warm in here, it's nice and safe in the pool, you can come and talk about mental illness. I can tell you from my own experience, I posted this about a week ago on Twitter. I used to have a tweet where I outed myself as autistic to try and encourage someone who you've never heard of because you never made it, who worked at one of the sites I worked at back in the day. And I did this as, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it's solely altruistic. I also wanted to just show like that you can succeed if you have these things right. When I did this, TSM fans, when the later controversy happened, came back and over the next 4 years posted hundreds of comments of the most vile things entirely centered around using what I'd said as a way to try and hurt my feelings. Now,
Yeah.
I've gone through decades of internet wars where at least I can somewhat disassociate from the name Thorin. I don't think of that as me, etc. I can think that's who I represent. I mean, I've got techniques for coping with it. I can't even imagine what would happen if you were like a Bobski or a Simple or Smoothia, someone who's had their little, they've had their moments, they've come close to the edge or they've gone over the line. I can't imagine if you were one of those people and you say to people, by the way, guys, I actually also, suffer from panic attacks and anxiety, how fucking people who lose skins will come back to that post, how people will use that to try and hurt your feelings. They'll send you DMs when you have your DMs open. They'll send you Facebook messages. They'll do all sorts of, the little demons on the internet will just come and try and torture you. So to actually tell that person to come out in the public and that everything will be fine, it's not only just inaccurate, it could actually be very harmful. Because again, as you say, they never think, right, that the bad guy could have mental health issues or that could even be something that causes their behavior. Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think as well, like, we talked about it a little bit on the whole episode as it related to the pimp fiasco. But, you have to understand, like, there is something wrong with somebody that would attack somebody on that basis. I'm just sorry, I've got somebody in the chat that created an account just sort of going, would you consider yourself alt-right? I consider you a fucking dickhead and a doyle. Fuck off. Right, anyway, let's go on. Right, so, I am sort of tired of having to accept the premise that there is nothing wrong with the person that would attack somebody to the point where you would be content to sort of drive them to suicide. There is something wrong with you if you are doing that on the internet, right?
Of course.
And we just had an example of it, like a tragic example just the other day. Hana Kimura, who was a 22-year-old female wrestler, was appearing on like a reality show. And because of an interaction she had on a reality show, she was spammed by fans, basically telling her to kill herself. And she did. She followed through on it. And it's like, I think the people that were spamming her and telling her to do that, I think they're mentally ill.
I would imagine probably, yeah.
Yeah, and I think clearly she was suffering as well with a form of mental illness. This is what I mean. It's like mental illness, it's not like some benign quality you have within where it's like immediately you're the victim. No, it can make you engage in really awful behavior towards other people. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't get help. It doesn't mean we should flippantly pass it off. It doesn't mean that I can't be empathetic. But we have to understand when we talk about mental health stuff, it's not just like, we're not just talking about when you have anxiety or panic attacks, when you have depression, when you're feeling bad. There's a lot of negative behavior that is born from people sort of not engaging with reality because, like the internet has fucking warped people's minds to like such a ridiculous degree. So, yeah, I'd love to have a fucking serious conversation about it. I'd love to start by talking about that, how sort of, being in the public eye, you never really hear about that. You never really hear about how it affects these players.
Let's be real, mate. No one wants to hear it. That's the problem. The same fan who now imagines, they think of like Device, someone they like, going, well, I'm actually struggling a bit, guys, with the pressure. They want to hear that guy talk about it. They don't want to hear, right, that even when you're being criticized for something you did do, people do it in a way that could also push you to the brink of your sanity. Could gaslight the fuck out of you. Like, I'll tell you one of the things, you'll be able to relate to this, that you have to have been like a big figure or a content creator or have a lot of followers to understand. One of the things that hurts the most is when someone who you recognize, they are a fan of yours, and they, in theory, have been riding with you, right? They just didn't see the threads you're talking about. And so they gaslight you and tell you, so you mean when I just criticized and said, I thought you shouldn't have written it that way, that now I'm mentally ill? Or so you just say anyone who disagrees with you is mentally, it's like, no, I'm literally talking about tweets I could show you where the person tells me to kill myself. The way they say, like, I deserve to die because I've brought out some information about TSM. Like that in itself, it can sometimes be more dangerous than the troll, because the troll you see for what he is. But when the normal person that you think will have human compassion for you, basically in that moment, out of their own frustration, the fact that you're moaning about something to them frivolously, then basically almost turns on you. That in itself is just like, why the fuck do I bother? You just think, throw the fucking TV out the window. Like, well, it's not TV, CRT or whatever. Like, just forget it. You just think, why the fucking bother?
Well, yeah, then this is the other thing as well. I mean, like, people go, oh, it would be so brave and awesome if, like, this public figure would sort of openly talk about, their struggles. Why? So you can use it as ammunition fucking next time they do something that you disagree with or say something that you disagree with.
Mate, think of those people where all those people were having that backlash. Like, who gives a fuck about landlords losing their money in the lockdown? You know, you're essentially talking about like Mr. fucking Singh, who lives around the corner, who rents an apartment at someone below. Like, we're not talking about Jeff Bezos, but that's the point. As soon as someone they consider to be part of a power hierarchy has anything wrong, it's like when you see those stories, you'll have seen them, where a real like athlete or singer is like, oh, I'm suffering depression. And people are like, oh, boo-hoo, oh, you're in a mansion crying. It's like, how fucking compassionless has society become? That's where I agree with you. Social media has made people mentally ill. Like, we're literally abusive, fucking exploitative people just for funsies to other people on the internet, as if they weren't real, as if this was like a fucking one of those Japanese games where you're just you and you're going around talking to all the people, picking fun options to do. Like, it's real life, guys.
No, that is the key thing. It's like it's sort of I don't want to use the term gamified human experience, but it's definitely created like a barrier, right? Like a sort of a membrane that empathy can't pierce. And that's the fundamental problem with social media. It gives you the illusion of being sort of connected to everybody else that has access to the internet in real time, but with none of the sort of social nuance that you couldn't behave in the way that you do on social media. You couldn't say the things that you do on social media. There would be like real life reprisals for that. There aren't any on the internet. And as a result, people seem to have concluded that, oh, yeah, isn't social media awful? No, it's the people.
Of course.
It's the people.
It's what it reveals about people without consequences and without any social conceits or contracts, as it were. Without any of that, you see what happens when two people just interact in that way. And especially when, forget the idea of like no consequence, like they're not going to be able to catch up to me. You really can believe there aren't any. Like, you think you're just throwing a comment out there. Yeah, if they see it, they see it. If they don't, they don't. It's like, no, that comment goes into a person's brain and just is like the fucking diseased prion of mad cow disease and destroys them utterly from inside. You don't know that. You're just a guy firing it off. That's why the saddest thing about this is, we've told this story many times. If you ever track these fuckers down and you pin them to what they've done, they instantly transform back into a normal person and go, oh, I'm so sorry. I've done it, and go, this is even worse. The fact that you aren't basically the most evil guy ever makes this even more depressing.
Yeah, but I think that's why I say it has to be some sort of like illness. It has to be like some sort of like disassociative state that it puts you in temporarily. And then when confronted with the sort of heinous reality of your actions, you either have the psychotic break. This is why people are like, look at my Twitter feed and they don't understand like what I'm doing. They go, oh, look, he's arguing with these people. Go look at like when I'm arguing with someone that is saying something that is patently false, something they've imagined. I don't just push back and go, you full of shit. I ask them questions. And I ask them questions because I'm trying to get them to interface with reality in some meaningful way. So, somebody says, oh, well, you would say that because you're a shill for ESL. So you ask them, like, well, in which way do I shill for ESL? How much money do ESL pay me? How do they pay me? When do I get it? What am I getting it for? And you keep asking them questions. And obviously, these people will keep going and going and going. And one of two things happens. The first is the rare instance where reality sort of seeps in and they go, oh, yeah, I'm just talking bollocks. Sorry. Like, thanks for replying. Super rare. 90% of the time, what happens is they keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper, and you sort of see how fucking insane the delusion is. It doesn't bother me. I'll just keep going all day and asking them questions. Eventually, they tap out because they can't handle it. But it's like it's insane, sort of what's going on, how people think, and how people interact with each other based on things they've entirely imagined. Almost every argument on social media, by the way, is nothing to do with what you've actually said, and everything to do with what the person who is arguing with you has imagined you have said.
And remember, this is the other thing. That's where that whole Kathy Newman, so what you're saying comes from. They don't just take your thought, they then project out what the rest of the conversation would have been. And so you're now arguing with like the fifth fucking generation of what they think you would have said to them back and then what you would have gone here. So they try to preempt the whole thing. Like, I got a good analogy for you, actually. I remembered this. Because I remember this from like a book I was once reading about James Jyse, believe it or not. And it was a story that happened early in James Jyce's life that was told to him by his father. And basically, during the Crimean War, there was an Irish soldier that his father knew called Buckley, right? And this guy, during the Crimean War, caught sight of like an enemy general. And supposedly the rule in the military, right, is you try to kill whoever the highest ranking officer you see is, because the logic is it might end the battle, might end the war, like, you know, they might have to retreat. It's just a way to kind of like,
damage to them.
Yeah, sure. Exactly, with the least human life cost.
Yeah.
So he's thinking, right, he sees this guy, he thinks, right, I can fucking shoot him. But then the guy he notices is pulling his trousers down and take a shit just in a field. And in the moment he takes his trousers down, it makes the guy realize, oh, fuck, that's just another person. And he delays. But then the second he pulls his trousers back up again, he's just a guy wearing a uniform. He just shoots him. Like that's the analogy of what like social media is like. Once they realize it's a person, of course, all the social instincts kick in. They don't want to be that. They don't want to even be the person doing that. But it's too late at that point in time. In this scenario, you've shot the guy already.
Yeah. So I'll throw in a palate cleanser for us, because social media, it's not all bad. You do get some occasional bangers on there.
Oh,
we've got a guy who
is the
musical
interlude.
It is musical interlude.
One of the best things I've ever seen.
Yeah. So you ready to play this, Sam?
Yeah, I'm ready. Right.
All right. Well, let me give me a 3, 2, 1 in a second. But I'll just say that there's a guy called Index CS, and probably the best meme that's ever been related.
He made something else as well for No Majors Club, because he won a T-shirt. I can't remember what he made, but he did something else as well.
Did he get that T-shirt? Did
that's what he was. He did the Scarface deep fake. Yeah, but I think you sent him money to get one or something. He told me. I asked him, did he get one? And he said, yeah, you.
I don't remember doing that, but you know, I do have loads of substance abuse problems, so who knows? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Who knows? But anyway, he sent the funniest fucking meme I think we've ever had related to By the Numbers. Like, literally buckled me, and it's probably some mad arrogant hubris, because it is just us. It is just our own jokes being played back to us. But the way that it's packaged is so fucking funny. It absolutely broke me. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. So, Sam, when you're ready.
All right, 3, 2, 1, go.
Puppet on a string.
Now that's what I call Red Eye.
Oh, that she wants is another baby.
Listen to Red Eye sing songs from through the ages.
I got the key. I got the secret. I got the key to a world cyber game.
By now, available at no stores while stocks last.
A puppet on a string.
Oh, it's so funny.
By the way, the best part as well actually is the part he contributed, which is that's exactly the voice, if no one's ever seen it, to what the Now series is like. Like, get it now, all the latest hits. Like, he's actually just nailed it completely, hasn't he? You can believe it was real.
I don't even understand how he's done it so well. Like, and also, I don't understand how we've done it so well.
Oh, mate, the one where you're singing is like perfect to the beat and everything. That can be released.
Yeah,
I can't believe we've actually like.
I was
we're
impressed with my
in
own
tune.
impersonation. But yeah, but just the way, you see, I forgot about the other element, how he was going to change all the words so they were esports themed, and Duncan picked up on that with it. I'm got the key to World Cyber Games. Like, it's brilliant, mate. Oh, fucking hell, I can't believe. Now, that's what I call Red Eye, so that is absolutely... That's absolutely fucking brilliant. Index CS on Twitter. Throw him a follow.
Yeah, we might have to
give him some
record
internet clout.
Make the album for if we do that bot Majors Club that we were thinking about doing. Maybe we put that in there, mate, the album.
Well, we should have been doing that by now, probably, shouldn't we?
Nah, we got months
Obviously
yet. Mate, that major ain't happening. We all know it.
Oh, what you mean? You mean the one in November's not happening?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I mean, again, I won't talk about it, but yeah, as expected. But Bolsonaro's not really stuck the landing on coronavirus, has he? Let's be real about it. But anyway, whatever. So let's talk about Road to Rio. What a great fucking segue that is. Let's talk about the Road to Rio. Obviously, that was the online competition that was going on. For those that haven't been keeping up with what's been going on in these weird times, basically, we're going to have a bunch of kind of like regional tournaments where you earn points to essentially qualify or re-qualify for the major. Road to Rio started by assigning a lot of these points, RMR points, and they were kind of like, you know, they were pretty. There was a lot of games actually being played across all of the regions to see, you know, who was going to come out on top and who was going to get the most points to start off. We'll start with the European one, Road to Rio Europe. will go down at the lower end. I think the big talking point down here, there was two teams that immediately you couldn't believe they finished low down. One of which was Mousesports, and Mousesports had a terrible time in these Road to Rio online qualifiers. It just seemed like they just couldn't buy a win for love nor money, and they were losing to teams that
they had an easy group as well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, to put it in context, I've got all the results in front of me now. So let's have a look who they lost to. They lost to the Movie Star Riders, which is obviously the Spanish guys with Steel as the IGL. They lost to North. Then they lost. Oh no, they did beat Contact. Congrats on that, I suppose.
I mean,
they lost.
Someone had to lose that game.
Yeah, true. They lost to FaZe. They lost to Godsent. It was pretty brutal. Like all of the teams, these are teams that Mousesports sort of before the player break would have beat comfortably. We were talking about Mousesports as potentially being one of the best teams in the world.
They should have won this group, mate. Or come second or third. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So what do you attribute this to? Because I think you've intimated before. I think from your tweets where you've done like Wolverine meme. Like I love as well how you don't make your own memes. You just do an Alan Partridge style dictaphone entry on your Twitter account. Idea for a meme. Mousesports as Wolverine staring wistfully at a picture of a Krieg.
It's not even that hard a meme to make either. Just like
the idea you couldn't just do that is pathetic. But fair enough.
It is.
Crowdsource your memes.
Also, you notice what I'm doing there is having my cake and eating it. Like I'm implying I'm above memes and I wouldn't do that, but then I am also
make me a fucking meme
from the meme. Just trying to min max memes basically. No, well, listen, I don't think it's all just the Krieg. Like, that's not enough. Like, they have some brilliant players in Mousesports who obviously could be way better. But I don't think the Krieg helped because, as I mentioned before, they were a team where nearly all of them used it in the game, including the lower fraggers. So I expect you're going to drop off if you have to go to an AK or a Galil. Then throw in as well, just this whole year, Woxic never made it from last year, mate. I don't know what's happened to this guy. Like, the guy was an absolute game changer at the end of last year. He would just single-handedly take over when you were losing or when you needed that Dust 2 win. You just knew this guy had it in the bag. He was automatic. This year, he's just been an average player. It's been really depressing, actually. Like, I think people like Rob still have their good games. Frozen still has games he bangs out. But I just haven't seen Woxic this year. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's not having all the lands. I don't know. I don't know what to put it down to, but he has not been the Woxic that he needed to before. And let's be real. Once you get past Robs, Frozen, if you don't have Woxic, you don't have much in Mousesports. Like Chris J and Carrigan aren't going to frag out. That's not really their thing. So at that point in time, understandably, they become just another kind of team hanging around the top 10. They're not the killers that were supposed to be in every final. We're going to win these tournaments for me.
Weird as well, right? Considering how many people were sort of, back in the day, Woxic, he's so fucking online and all of this stuff.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
You would have thought this is the environment you would have flourished in, right? But yeah, really weird seeing Mousesports do so poorly. And I mean really poorly, they were rock bottom, I think, overall in the competition. Oh no, they weren't rock bottom. They were just above rock bottom. They were down there with complexity. They were just above Dignitas, just above Contact. So not a great run by any stretch of the imagination. Then you sort of inch up a little bit. Fnatic finishing 12th.
That's the shocker, right?
Yeah, this is the real shock. I would say about Europe. I mean, some teams have definitely overperformed, but within that, you've got two huge names. And I would say right now, on current form, Fnatic was a team that was kind of like jockeying for position to be discussed about again, potentially to fill that Astralis vacuum and be the number one team in the world.
Absolutely.
Certainly not beyond the realms of possibility that they could have done that.
You're arguably the most consistent team in the world.
Yeah, and yet here they are. Had some, again, really poor results in this online competition. And listen, we can have a broader conversation about fucking online CS and what it means and how it's a travesty that a major is sort of essentially being decided upon that. But regardless, the one thing I've always said that remains true about online CS, yes, it'll throw up shocking results. Yes, some teams will overperform and then do fuck all when they get to LAN because it's a different kind of pressure, different kind of environment. But Fnatic should have been winning.
The better team still does usually win. It's not like it's a complete crapshoot. Let's be real. Like ultimately, there's a reason why like Astralis did top the group, etc. Like the good teams on average do still win. It's just you get more occasional upsets. I agree.
The most notable loss, I would say, is they actually lost to Dignitas, which are the old NIP guys. That was one of the results that was like, and like, get right. I actually went off big time in that fucking series. It was like, it was insane because you've essentially got like a who's who of Swedish Counter-Strike sort of playing in this game. Fnatic and Dignitas, you know. But Get Right was huge. Flusher was huge in it. It's a pretty good series all told because it had like 2 overtimes and then a 16-14 decider on Dust too. Really good series. But again, there's no way this should be competitive. We all saw Dignitas in Flashpoint. We all know like how all the problems they've got and how reliant on Holzerk they are usually, you know, in most of their series. Well, not here. So that for me, and that happened pretty early on. I was kind of like, well, that's just an anomaly. That's just, you know, some Swedish on Swedish crime. Like, you know, you're going to get these insane results because everyone knows each other's game and they've been battling for so long against each other. But actually, Fnatic were really just poor overall in these competitions and ended up coming away with just 500 regional points for their efforts. So very disappointing performance from them.
And the most depressing thing about that move in particular is, remember, the whole reason Fnatic did those moves last year was when they bombed and they didn't make the major. So after all these months of excellence, overperforming what people thought, establishing consistency that was above and beyond everyone else, never basically having 2 bad days in a row. The idea that then when the major tournaments come along, when you need those points, now you're going to come 12th place, like, this is going to be depressing if of all the teams that don't make the major, it's teams like Na'Vi and Fnatic don't make it. Like, these are the teams we banked on to see at that major. We wanted to see one of these teams like in the biggest competition.
Yeah, and obviously it's early days. Like I say, there's going to be, isn't there like another 2?
Yeah, I mean, CS Summit was basically intimated it was going to be one. I think there's going to be more.
I did see that announcement. I didn't put it in the show prep, but yeah, I did see that. But yeah, basically, we're going to have some more competitions where people are going to have obviously opportunities. So there's going to be 2 more for each region. So there's still time. But this should have been a layup. This should have been easy points for Fnatic. You know, again, they lost to like Movie Star Riders and teams like that. They definitely dropped the ball here, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on them because, as you rightly point out, these are the teams you want to see at the major. I mean, we'll get to Na'Vi and whatnot in just a bit. Let's sort of go a little bit further up the pecking order. Let's talk about teams that kind of overperformed a little bit. I definitely want to throw in a mention to Godsent. Godsent.
I still don't know how they're doing it, mate. I look at their lineup every time and go, how?
Yeah. I mean, like when you look at well, I mean, put it this way: Godsent were one of the teams that should have definitely been down at the lower end. They ended up finishing 7th overall, got 1,000 points. Pretty good when you consider winning the thing gets you 1,600. You know, took many scalps along the way. And it's like you say, when you look at this roster, this is the most fucking busted. Like it's you couldn't even call it a retirement home because that implies that these motherfuckers had jobs to begin with. Like we're talking like Maiden is like the guy that everyone's like kind of talking about because he's like come from, you know, nowhere and is having like really good performances in this team. But you know, fucking hell, it's Crystal for fuck's sake, it's Stiko, it's Zane, it's Maikelele.
It's literally the who's who of who's been kicked from teams. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And yet they were able to play, you know, like some incredible series against much better teams. Now, does that happen when we get to a LAN with these guys? Probably not. But the crazy thing is that Godsent are a legitimate banana skin team now. You know,
you see that roster move they've already made?
Yeah. So I guess
some people can't catch a break, can they, Richard?
No. I think go on then. We'll throw that in here and we'll talk about it.
So basically, like Godsent, right after they've had these nice results, they're climbing in the rankings, etc. They just announced that Maikelele's kicked again, and they're bringing in that Farlig guy from Copenhagen Flames who had shown a bit of performance with the AWP. So it just shows that, like, listen, I've said this to him himself. I've obviously done an interview with him. Like, if you're Maikelele, listen, you might think it's unfair, but some way you have to take responsibility, mate. Like, it's just so unlikely that like 15 groups of people in a row are just being a cunt to you. Like,
I can't figure it out though. I can't figure out what he does. Like, honestly,
I can't either, really, because it can't just be toxicity. Put it that way. That whole angle.
No, that angle's bullshit.
As a person,
right? Well, put it this way: there is no way that it would be something that you do, like just as a person, because everyone in that roster is chill as fuck. and has dealt with huge egos and has dealt with, all sorts of situations. Like, Steakos doesn't give a fuck if you shout in a game or, he's not that type of guy. Crystal's the most fucking passive, chill dude of all time. I've never heard anything about Zayn. I mean, I've never met the guy, I don't think. I've never heard anything about him being like, a hothead, stressful. And Maiden's like the new kid on the block, so you don't get to say anything. Full fucking stop. So there has to be something more that's going on. But honestly, like, I agree with you. I would love to know what it is, because at this point, I hate Reddit dickheads that always go, if everywhere you go it smells of shit, look under your shoes. I am a Redditor. I talk in idioms and fucking blasé statements.
I do think all quotes come from God, I've noticed. I always just say, who the fuck said that quote then? I can just make up some shit as well,
Yeah, I know.
Does it mean it's right that I said it?
Right? But but it is crazy to me at this point where it's like, yet again, you're on a roster of fucking misfits and you start to play well and they go, better get that Maikelele out, eh? Like, fuck me. So I don't know what's going on. I'd love to talk to him about it again. Well, when did you do your interview with him?
Maybe like, I'm thinking maybe early 2018 or something. I think
There
maybe
you go,
2017,
right?
2018.
Paging my boy
There you
Bill.
go.
Beep, 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 beep. Come on, let's talk about it. Let's do an interview. I'm ready. But yeah, it just seems crazy to me. Because, like I said, you don't, when you're punching above your weight and when you're on the come up, you don't. How many times have you seen teams do this, by the way? Oh, we're finally punching above our weight and winning games. Yeah, time for that fucking roster move then. No, that's not the time. It's not the time.
Agreed.
Somehow, you have managed to fucking take, these players that are like journeymen and it's working now. You don't fuck with it. It's like some rickety ass fucking game of Jenga. You don't want to go next. Like, you don't want to pull the fucking block out. Just fucking relax. So yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but they've performed pretty well, and that sort of segues nicely into another team of fucking washed up motherfuckers somehow punching above their weight in these games. Heretics, the Kiyashima roster. Now there was a lot of talk when
another
Kiyashima
player who will not die in the game.
Yeah. I mean, like, there was a lot of talk when Kiyashima kind of came back into free agency, like, well, is he going to get that chance? Is all the old politics going to go away? Maybe. No. Kiyashima is still persona non grata for whatever reason in the French scene and didn't have any of the opportunities, despite having, spent a spell on Cloud9 and done okay and showing that he's still, match fit, so to speak.
I believe he even on stream went out of his way to say that he thought he should join, like G2 would be the team he'd want to play for. This is when they hadn't made the move to Nexa and Hunter, I think. So he even was basically signaling like, I would like to play in G2 now. And as far as I know, you're right, it was never even on the radar for these teams.
Yeah. No, never was. And the door is firmly closed. And put it this way, if you look at sort of the dip that French CS had, and at no point has anyone said, yeah, we should probably go get Kiyashima. He's like, no, he's completely out of that loop. So he's fine. He went and basically got together a bunch of players like XMS, Lucky. There's dudes that I never.
Another team of rejects, basically.
Yeah, well, these are the other ones that were like, when the French scene was going, fucking hell, we actually do need to replace all these players that have just been playing on the same lineups, the 10 players that just swap in and out depending on who's friends with who that week. We actually do need to start developing new talent. XMS was supposedly one of those guys. Lucky was supposedly one of those guys. And it just never happened for them. They just couldn't hang at that level because they had never had the experience to hang at that level. And when you get to that level, you're not going to be allowed to cut your teeth there. You had to already made your bones before you get to that point. So they cut them. Well, Kiyashima brought them in. Like I said, two dudes I'd never even seen play, I don't think, until this lineup with Maka and Nivera, the Belgian dude. But this team doing really, really well. I mean, like, they have had some series as well where it's like, these motherfuckers just grind on you. Like, you never... They're never giving you a run around. You never seem to have any momentum.
Yeah, their best map is fucking Nuke, seemingly. So if you can play that, you're not just some like stupid fragger team that's just accidentally shooting people. You're doing some work.
Yeah, and they get up all up in your shit. They never fucking, they just never seem to like stop. They I think in all the series, with the exception of Astralis, I think it was, or maybe Vitality too. But I think, anyway, they always took a map. I think, like, but 1 or 2 series, they always took a map off their opponents and generally played the other maps close. Now, sure, they did lose to Astralis. They did lose to Vitality. They did lose to Fnatic. These are top-tier fucking teams. No one should be taking this Heretics lineup kind of seriously going into this competition. People will be taking them seriously when they come out of it. I think 6th place, when you look at some of the teams they finished above North, finished above Ents, finished above Mousesports, finished above Fnatic, that's a hell of a finish. Even if it is online CS. So really, definitely a team to watch. They've caught my attention. And someone just told me, Niver is Scream's brother, so he's obviously...
Oh, yes, I forgot about that. But
yeah, well, in that case, definitely the better of the two right now, by the way.
And then the other angle is, like, there's a world in which you saw the way G2 and Vitality matched up and they played G2. Like, they could have gone even further in this tournament. Like, I will say, I'm going to guess they were helped by the online world where suddenly you're not staring across at fucking Simple over the other side of a massive stage as a baying crowd goes, and then no one's shouting for you. But yeah, I can imagine that would be different. But this is exactly the moment where when the other teams go, doesn't count, does it? It's just online. That's when you step to the front and show your skills. So yeah, mad respect to them for what they've done. They're basically the equivalent to the Godsent guys in the other group. Like, yeah, another team that just did work.
And we've got to talk about NIP. Again, they finished 5th overall in this road to Rio. Had some, keep in mind, we talked about them and their potential, when they made these changes to the roster. And we're going to talk again about another strange roster change, I suppose, as we segue from this. But let's just talk about the road to Rio first. This team, I'm so confused by NIP, dude. Like, I just don't understand. Like, every time they change a piece and you think it's got worse, it sort of gets better. And they performed really, really well in this tournament. And had some big results. And I was like looking at this roster going, all right, nice little fucking surprise package. Like, going to be going to tournaments. Definitely want to watch out for, another banana skin team. Considering I thought NIP were kind of just like a fucking joke when they brought Nork in and stuff like that. I didn't think they were going to do anything. I was like, someone airlift Rez out of this motherfucker. But actually, Nip were doing good. And then, inexplicably, they decided to make another roster change. But like I said, I'll get your opinion overall on how you think they've been playing and whether or not this might be a bit of a false dawn.
Yeah, the sick thing about this is, like, I had this when they first signed Threat as the coach, and then I found out he's got none of the original players, like none of the original fives there. There's no old school veteran. Like, the closest they got to a veteran in the team is like fucking Rez and Lekro. Well, Twist, I guess technically you should count in that regard. But
yeah,
to me, he never properly committed to the scene, so I still think of him as a half in, half out player in that sense.
True.
When you look at the players they had, obviously, at least you're giving Threat like sort of a clean canvas to work with. And I think he has done fucking work. You look at what they've developed as a team, you look at the map pool they have, the fact that he's managed to get all these people into the right roles, like all the things you heard about the names that were coming up who hadn't played in the teams we knew before, Plopsky, Nork. You heard on the way up, these were supposed to be the next star players. But when they came in as the 5th player to a team, of course, they weren't those players. They were just the fucking 5th player. You look in this team, they are the star players. Like, actually, the pieces are right there in this squad. That's why I'm with you. I'm actually kind of shocked. To me, this roster move is out of left field because that's all. This is a team that's improving event on event. They're looking better against all the teams they're playing against. They're getting experience. They're another team that's benefiting from this scenario where you're all at home. It's like having a super extended boot camp. Like, could be nothing better for a young squad. So, agreed. The idea that you take that chemistry and you go, let's just fuck around with it a bit, though. This could probably still fix something that's not broken. Like, yeah, that is a bit weird for me, I have to say.
Yeah, very, very strange. And the player they're bringing in the form of Hampus, it's kind of like, really? Like, that's the guy? Like, I've got nothing against Hampus. I talked him up for other roles in the past, saying that, this is somebody who clearly wants to be a dedicated in-game leader, someone that's, like, always looking to add stuff. But there was nothing wrong with NIP. You didn't need a complete change in direction. You didn't need to bring in a player that's going to have completely new ideas about what he wants to do tactically, how he's going to use all these players. Very, very strange. And especially as well because in the statement, it was kind of intimated that Threat played a part in it. I don't know. Threat doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. I've known Bjorn a long time. I don't think he's like some cutthroat dude who it's like my way or the fucking highway kind of coach. He's never been that guy. So I just don't even. It's not even a move that makes any fucking like logistical sense to me. What was interesting as well was that Peter, the former NIP coach, came out and basically said like, yeah, that this fucking removal of Lekro is absolute bullshit, and this is part of an ongoing, series of like mismanagement, efforts going back to 2017. And he ended up doing a 2-part interview with DK talking about all of it, which not a lot of it was specific to the move, because obviously Peter hasn't been kind of involved for a while. But I thought it was kind of like, it's always a fucking clown fiesta with Nip. They're just like another one of these orgs where it's like, listen, for fuck's sake, you finally got a run where things are going okay on the server. You haven't had a negative headline for why rock the fucking boat? I just don't understand
rebuilding your rep. Like, you are getting that rep as like it's a place for young people to start to show that they're good players. We've gotten rid of all the stain of the fact that the old team scapegoated everyone, held on for too long. And then, yeah, I'm with you. Just as you build into a head of like, this is pretty good PR, actually. People aren't saying nothing in PayPal every fucking time we play constantly. Then the idea that you do this move, and then you obviously couldn't know that Peter would come out, but he has absolutely thrown gasoline on that fire if there wasn't one already, because anyone who was an old Nip or Lekro fan now is just like, fuck Nip. And it's like, they just stopped saying that,
Then obviously we had the top 3. No point in talking about Vitality. This is just for EU, by the way. Thoughts about FaZe getting in there 3rd? Pretty good run. They're continuing being... They're not a team that strikes me as a team that's going to win tournaments, but they look a team capable of having like deep runs when we get back to normal CS. Obviously, with the Olaf news that we just talked about earlier, I guess a lot of that's going to gauge on who they bring in. I have no inkling what the next signing would look like, but I guess it bodes well for the team overall. The fact that they were able to do so well, finish 3rd, and let's be fucking real, Olaf Meister's been dead weight the past fucking 3 to 6 months. I mean, literally, like the fucking millstone around the team's neck. So they do have an opportunity to bring in somebody, maybe an in-game leader, maybe. So, but yeah, very impressed with FaZe in this tournament. They had some big wins, big results, and they're playing good Counter-Strike at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, look, at least the premise of FaZe that you want the big fraggers to have good games, you're seeing it. Like, Brocky has highlights on Reddit every fucking day, it seems like. Nico just drops 1 billion kills, win or lose. That's all great. Those parts work. coldzera, I think, is a little bit underwhelming. I still feel like they never really got him to work in this team like he did in MIBR. He's still a good player. Like, he's still going to do his job. And that's a guy I know puts in the hours. So there's certain people just are never going to be bad if they put the hours in. The problem is, the Rio and Olaf Meister issue gets a bit awkward because it is the young guy who's sort of the one who's having the contributing the extra performance to Nico. It's not Rio or Olaf. It's these guys who've been forced in the role player angle that just doesn't look as clean. So I hope, by the way, one reason I'm glad Olaf Meister himself chose to step away is I didn't want to live in the world where, because Rain doesn't have as big a name as Olaf Meister, he's the one who gets forced out. So it's like everyone else, like Olaf's allowed to be bad for 2 years. Then if Rain drops off for 6 months, right, get the fuck out. We don't accept losing around here. It's FaZe clan. Like, that would be whack. So I hope this gives him a chance to reinvent himself. I hope if they do get someone, that they just sit down and after all these bad fucking recruitment, basically the Brocky one's the only good one you've made in 2 fucking years, and I guess coldzera. Like, they're the only 2 good recruitments you've made. The rest have been just
great to start off with either, by the way, the coldzera thing. Like, he had, remember that debut performances where it was fucking his worst, it was his career worst performance. Insane. But yeah,
I hope they take stock of this and do a proper move. Like, get the person you need to actually make yourself a championship team. Like, this is just wasting Nico's prime at this point in time.
Well, I think as well, you know, we with all of the news around FaZe and the CSGO Wild stuff and Banks kind of framing, oh yeah, we only got involved with wanting to make money off that skins casino. So
the evil Banks, by the way, just so everyone's aware.
Yeah, not the original Banks, the FaZe Banks. But yeah, the way he framed it was, we only got involved with that skins gambling website so we could fund a really good CS team. Well, let's be real. Like, you haven't... The coldzera move, it looks great on paper, but I don't know how much money they spend. I mean, obviously he's getting a good salary, but it looks like that his contract was winding down anyway. So I agree with you. It would be great to see FaZe kind of like get back to that what they were originally founded on, which was the idea of being a all-star roster. And we've slowly and surely watched that kind of like chip away. And now, realistically, no disrespect to Rain, he was never a star player anyway, even though I think he's hugely important to the roster overall. It's Nico and coldzera really have the sort of star power over there. And there's moves that could be made. Now, I don't know. Do you think they actually do go for an IGL? I just don't believe in it at this point. I just don't think they'll ever.
Basically, it was intimated to me that they almost acknowledge themselves that they are in an impossible situation where it's like there's no one they will respect and trust as an IGL, and therefore the only people they could get are the people who wouldn't join FaZe Clan because it's fucking FaZe Clan and they're in a better team already. So basically, there's somewhat shit out of luck on that one. So I don't know how you ever overcome that, because as far as I can tell, that's a limitation in Nico's mind. Until you can overcome that, you're just going to recruit another player. So at this point, you're just looking for a competent player elsewhere. There's people out there. There's plenty of players that are good. You could get another Brocky type player. The problem for me is just that I just don't know what the point is. Like, eventually, listen, take a page out of the book of Fnatic, where when they had to humble themselves, they took a big gamble. If Golden comes back and he's just shit, you've wasted another 6 months or a year. But you know what? There was also the outside chance that what happened, that he actually got his shit together and he was really good. That's what FaZe has to do. They basically have to understand, unless you are going to spend the most money in the world, which you're not, as you've just alluded to, then you need to take a gamble. And that means you have to pick someone up who isn't right now the IGL you want, but he's going to become the IGL you want in your team. So that might mean going crazy. Maybe you go out there and you pick up some guy who's a total unknown, like it is another Brocky example. But if you do it, commit to it, play the way that the guy wants, and see if you have a chance to become a great team. I mean, Fnatic's the best example of it. Sure, not everyone's going to work out like that, but I think they at least had the sort of commitment to the idea that it's allowed to flourish.
G2 in its second, they got absolutely battered by Astralis in the best of 5 kind of final. I think they only got 8 rounds. So Astralis remains G2's kryptonite. But G2 overall finishing second here. They continue to improve and continue to impress. Had some like great results, and honestly, we were wondering how it was all going to work with this international, kind of roster. I still think there are some question marks on the roster, but honestly, it's not Hunter, it's not Nexa. Like those guys are doing work. I mean, alongside Kenny, like they're obviously the best things about this G2 team now.
Yes. And the other thing is, like, for me, G2 is what FaZe pretends to still be. This is a team that has a load of fraggers who, when they're on their game, they just dust you the fuck off. They just get you straight out the server on your map, their map. It doesn't fucking matter. Basically, like you said, the only team they seem to have real problems with is Astralis. And I even think some of that's psychological. That isn't just like, it's not like they're losing name duels.
Of course it is. No, but
they just look like they know
think about that ridiculous match where they just didn't even defuse the bomb. Like,
they've done this a bunch of times in these games as well. They always do some mad brain fart in the game, but only against Astralis, bizarrely.
Yeah. Yeah, that completely smacks of it being like a huge mental block. Like, it's very reminiscent, like I say, when, like, for example, remember that Western Wolves team used to play like NIP, and they would get into like a commanding position and then just like, again, I'm going back to before the fucking flood, but that was because of MSL's. Oh, it's the Swedes, it's those guys. They're always going to win. Like, just had his own mental block about it. So yeah, I think that. But overall, I think like G2 are looking real good. I want to see them at the major, actually, assuming the major goes ahead. I really want to see what they're going to do, because I would love to see.
It'd be a nice dark horse to win the fucker.
No, but it's the thing, isn't it? Especially right now when you think about all the other results we're going to get into from other regions and how bad some other teams have looked. G2 are primed to fucking fill that vacuum. Like, let's be real, okay? They've just done this Road to Rio tournament. They are now ranked 5th in the world, G2. Well, let's look at the teams above them. Mousesports are still above them. Fucking hell, they've had a nightmare. They need to really pull out with a nosedive. There's already people like me, back of my mind, I'm thinking, have we hit that point that all Carrigan teams hit where, they've had the period, they've won the trophies, they've peaked, and now, everyone just kind of plateaus and goes, yeah, it was a good run, wasn't it? Yeah, see you at the reunion, everyone just sort of because Carrigan's such a nice guy. Are we there? You know, Fnatic, obviously we just talked about them, finished terribly. Na'Vi, we're going to get to that, and then Astralis. Now, kudos by the way to Astralis for finishing on top in this online CS with the shit show that has been going on in the background.
Yeah.
I mean, model pros in a lot of ways, but I mean, every team we've just talked about there, G2 could beat those guys in a series. G2
And they might
could
not
knock
even
them off
need
a
to.
pedestal.
Those teams might just get the fuck out the way, like you're saying. Everyone's got a massive flaw above them. Think how rare that is that you could ever be number 5 and have all the number 4 teams just collapsing apart around you. That'll never happen. So I agree. If the major was tomorrow, that'd be the team I'd put the cheeky bet on if I had like the fucking 10-1 odds or whatever.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some other regions then. I guess in terms of priority, let's go to NA next. The North American road to Rio, a little bit of a weird one.
Sure.
I'll guess the big story. We won't talk about August and Bad News Bears, and we already talked about the Year and MIBR thing. Let's just get down and talk about. I'm not even going to talk about MIBR. I feel like we're a broken record on those guys. Like, smash that team apart, please. Stop it.
Yes.
Although, actually, no, they have made a roster move. So go on, let's slot that in.
Okay.
MIBR were disappointing once again in the tournament. Who saw that coming? But now what we expected to happen has happened. They went and made a roster move. We said that Mayon had been primed for a while to basically be the fall guy from this latest fuck up. Of course, it can never be. I hope your next CS royalty video was about this fucking core, by the way, at MIBR and how they fucking get away with just.
Oh, they definitely survive on the fucking glory days to the bitter end, don't they?
Yeah, it's fucking ridiculous. And like again, Fallen seems to be above reproach when holy shit. You know, like think about how long he went with playing bad. And now he's playing good, but it's still not enough to lift the team he controls and picks the roster for out of the fucking doldrums that they're in. But anyway, I said it from the moment Mayan came onto this roster. I felt massively sorry for the kid, because it was so clear what was going on. And that was that they were like, fucking hell, we're shit out of luck. What should we do? We could drop one of us. We could admit we were wrong about players like Phelps and Bolts. Maybe go back and get them and try and have renewed respect for each other. Now, what we'll do is we'll pick a fucking kid that we've heard good things about, stick him on the roster, and then if he plays bad, well, it's just dead man's shoes, innit? We'll just fucking cut him and blame him and say he wasn't good enough and fuck his entire career. Yep, sounds good. Yep, rinse and repeat forever. That's the MIBR philosophy right now. So I felt massively sorry for the kid. Worst part as well, by virtue of being Argentinian, and the Brazilian fans, we know about that hardcore contingent. We've talked about them a lot. The abuse he would get from his own fans, ostensibly, was insane. And you could see it was starting to get to him towards the end of his tenure on this team. You know, no pro player should ever get upset about a fucking meme with his name in it appearing on a broadcast. No, but you shouldn't even have the time for that to register in your brain. The fact that you were worried about this showed that he was like really on edge about his position within the team. He was getting lots of criticism. Yes, his performances, if we're just being honest about it, wasn't good enough. I think the nail in the coffin was definitely with what went down at Flashpoint. He had some absolute shocking rounds, you know, and definitely cost
including
them
the final.
Yeah, I mean, definitely cost them the final with some of the rounds he fucked up with defusers and stuff. You know, but that when you're living in your own fucking mind all the time, constantly over-analyzing everything you're doing, you can't play. You can't be fluid. So I actually have a lot of sympathy. I will always have sympathy for players that are being brought in to basically be sacrificial offerings to the fans when the time comes. And Mayan clearly was. So he's on the bench. They've now gone for another young upcoming talent. That's probably going to get sacrificed on the same fucking altar. It's TRK. And TRK, he's already played a game for them. And guess what? It wasn't particularly great. I think it was... Wait, was it DreamHack?
I think they played in DreamHack, yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
game he had like bottom frag on one of the maps or something.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. It was DreamHack. Fuck me, man. It's all a blur. Like I'm losing.
Oh, there's another thing, by the way.
Yeah.
The same CSPPA that hasn't said a fucking peep about one of their board members playing against the team he owns is coming out saying We need to have a talk about mental illness. So we're not going to bother mentioning that in this lockdown, we're ramming CS games every fucking day, it feels like. Every one of these tournaments is like you play 7 best-of-3s into a double elim bracket. Like, what is this? I thought this was the time people would get a break. I thought this is the time when people would be able to ease off a little bit. So how can you simultaneously say that when you have this historic partnership with ESL and they never get brought in the equation? They're the fuckers filling your schedule, boys. They're filling it even when you're stuck at home.
Yeah, it's insane. So I'm not gonna speak too much about those games. It's early doors. I think the team is still dysfunctional. Road to Rio proved it. I hope Mayan lands on his feet, but honestly, I don't think he's going to be someone we ever talk about in top 10 Counter-Strike ever again. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's the poison chalice. Down there at 7th to 8th with them, Evil Geniuses continue to be that enigma. This was a team that we were talking about. Wow, imagine a world where Team Liquid #1. Evil Geniuses #2, a huge NA rivalry. That seems like a fucking fever dream now, doesn't it? Like what were we thinking? These teams are like fucking absolutely not in the conversation. And EG has had like a really just rough run of results. And it's still inexplicable. They're falling into the same trap that fucking Team Liquid fell into. Where it's like, your roster is amazing. Yep. How are you losing games? How?
No, I agree on all levels. Like these are the teams where it's the opposite to Heretics and Godsent. You look at the lineup and you go, you do a double take. Wait, what? That team can't lose to this other team over here. That's impossible. And it happens again and again and again. And the mad thing about them is, and this is one thing I hate about the FaZe clan approach to making teams, is when you put that many fucking sick players together, you're not going to lose 15 series in a row. Eventually, you're going to trip over and fucking win one. And the worst thing is when you do that, everyone's going to go, finally, back on track. This is what should be happening. And it's not. That's the outlier. The outlier is when EG does well in the tournament. It's when they have a 2 or 3 series in a row where they look competent. Then you start to get back into the lull of like, well, they're fixing it, they turn it around, and then straight back in the fucking dumpster. Because some of the series they've lost this year is so unacceptable for a team as highly paid as they are, with as good players as they have. Like, at this point in time, they're still on paper one of the best lineups in the whole world.
I mean, the loss to Cloud9 was pretty bad. Who else did they fucking lose to? 100 Thieves. Not great.
Another fucking washed team.
Yeah, but then the fact that they lost, like, Daps took a fucking break from his, regular routine of cock and ball torture to fucking just come along and fucking wreck them. Revenge. They lost to fucking GenG. GenG is meant to be like the fucking, come on. A lot of people were big reps. They're not supposed to go and beat Evil Geniuses, though. They're not supposed to be doing that. Yeah, I mean, fucking Automatic absolutely popped off. And the crazy thing is, as well, if you go look at that series, again, it had 2, like, really close maps in it. EG were playing from the front. And then they go and they lose in overtime. And then they lose a close game. Yeah. How many times is this going to happen to Evil Geniuses? They blaze the first map. I feel like whenever I watch an EG series, it's like you go, oh yeah, this is the team that could be #2 in the world. They're playing incredibly well. It's fine. Yep, this is good. And then they seem to, like, as soon as they get into like close situations, they completely fucking go to pieces. They absolutely crumble, and it's just not championship winning material. And then you start thinking, Team Liquid had the same problem. So what is going on with fucking these top NA teams, where they just have like sort of no mental fortitude as soon as any pressure is applied to them whatsoever?
I'll just say this is one of those moments where it's this chapter 1 million in just getting a sports psychology trainer doesn't fix everything. They're not fucking they're not magicians. They can't just come in and apply a magic balm and make you healed. They're working with a very delicate machine in your fucking brain and trying to get people to interact in a certain way and communicate. Because I can tell you, I know that these teams have that kind of sports staff. Like Team Liquid, even when they were at that fucking major and other tournaments afterwards where they weren't winning the tournament, they would be doing FaceTimes with the fucking sports psych guy that they have, who supposedly is really good and can do well. Like, it's not like they don't have these resources, but something's not working. It's not getting through. Or if it is working, God only knows what they'd be without that. Jesus. So I think it's another team where just making the swap of I'm a pet for Zeus wasn't going to fix everything. Like, there's clearly something fundamentally wrong with this team or the way they're choosing to play CS or wherever Stanislaw's head's at. Because I tell you what, just like Carrigan, Stanislaw has his own little rep like that. He comes in, you get that little spike, you start doing really well, and then when it goes bad, it fucking ends in divorce. It always ends badly with his teams.
Yeah. So I guess, we segue to talking about the other sort of component. Team Liquid should have been, I mean, look, all due respect to the region, Team Liquid for me should have been absolute favourites to just
win. This is the funniest money they're going to ever probably see in their fucking careers. The idea that they finish 4th in this field, like, that takes talent, guys. You must be really good at Counter-Strike and be fucking losing at Counter-Strike.
I just don't even understand it. I don't even understand it. Like, I wasn't even worried when they dropped that map to Bad News Bears. I think that was like the first series, like back in fucking April or whatever the fuck it was. I was like, you know what? Yeah, that happens. It's online. It's PTR. It's fucking, these players, they get inside, the established pros' heads and they fuck with their minds. And yeah, you're liable to drop a map there. That's fine. And then they beat MMPR and you're like, yeah, this is fine. This is fine. They lost to Envy. And I know people in the chat are going to start typing, well, you can't sleep on Envy. They've been doing well. Michu's really fragging out of his mind. Nifty has been vindicated. And they're going to type all of the bullshit. Right? They're going to type all of the bullshit. But Liquid got 2-0'd by Envy. It wasn't even a close series. It was 16-7, 16-7. They got absolutely fucking wrecked. They got fucking wrecked. Keep in mind, Envy are responsible for one of the worst fucking players I've ever seen in professional Counter-Strike. They're not like some insane team that should be feared or respected by the likes of Team Liquid. That's just the reality. They got battered by them. Battered. So I don't even know what that was. So then I was like, this isn't looking all that good, actually. They lose 2-0 to Furia. They win the next couple of games. They have to play Furia again. They lose again to Furia, so Furia get the double over them. And then they lose to fucking Cloud9. Like, I feel that should just be, like, the rite of passage now as to whether or not you're allowed to be in the NA scene. If you're losing to that particular Cloud9 lineup, you probably should start thinking about packing it up, honestly, because it's got a big name, big brand strength. It sounds great when you see it in the match ticker. You go, oh, I'll tune. Oh, no, it's that Cloud9. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I thought it was 2018. Sorry, my bad. And you can just skip out on it. This is ridiculous. Like, I just don't even understand it. Like, what? Like, we're talking November? We're still talking about Team Liquid, like, oh, can they get back to being the #1 team in the world? They've got the roster. I hope they don't make a roster move. I don't understand what the fuck has happened to these guys. Their performance in this Road to Rio was embarrassing, frankly.
Oh, I absolutely agreed. Again, like I say, they're one of the teams that should be, just like Na'Vi, they should be the biggest benefactor from all the regions splitting up because you just stay in your own little pond. Remember, Team Liquid even used to be really good at taking care of the domestic competition. Like, you just knock them all on the fucking head because you've got the all-star team and psychologically they all think you're better. Hence why they always beat EG. And then you take the free money, right? You just pick up that nice big sack of free money. No, you fucked up and finished 4th place. You managed to lose, like you say, like half a dozen fucking series in an NA-only tournament online, for God's sake. Like, these aren't even bad online players. Like, they can certainly perform online when the normal circuit's going on. So I'm with you. Like, this is another team where it's just question marks everywhere. Like, what the fuck is going on? And one of the things that's always troubled me with Team Liquid is because they have so many passive personalities, you get doubly infuriated because they just seem cool with it. Like, oh, well, it's a bad day, isn't it? It's like, nah, there can't be this many bad days. Eventually I at least want someone to go, this is bullshit, you know?
Well, I mean, do you know what it's reminiscent of? It just reminds me of the sort of era that never was with FaZe. You know, that Team Liquid team was unstoppable. I mean, they did that Intel Grand Slam in record time, and you're like, well, fucking hell, they're going to dominate for a while. And then ever since that fateful player break, they've not only not looked like themselves, they have got progressively worse. That's the terrifying prospect, that you look at that roster, and again, I'm still scratching my head. Like, what cuts would you make to that roster? Like, it's not like EG where you've got a Tarek and you go, yeah, you got to cut him. Like, you look at that roster and you go, there's no fat to trim, so what the fuck is going on? It's so crazy. And like I say, I think when all is said and done, and the inevitable roster move does happen, I think we're gonna look back and it's gonna be one of those like missing rings. Like that team should have dominated for a year. It should have been an era, and it was all primed to be there. You'd already won big trophies.
Yep. You checked every box, literally.
Yeah. And then I don't understand what happened, man. I'll never be able to figure it out from now until the end of time. Let's talk about the teams that did well. Furia back. Who's laughing now about them 5-year contracts, Duncan? Obviously, the manager that basically forced these players into a life of indentured servitude.
You know, that's actually the sad thing, is we've been talking already about Nape and Astralis, the teams where the org is starting to overpower the play of the team. Here's the sad thing about Furia, is when I watch them in the server, they're one of my favorite teams to watch, actually. It's always an exciting game. So many of the players play well. Listen, they've got that nice even variability. They can beat anyone. They can lose to anyone. They beat MIBR well, which is good for the Bants, obviously. So I like them as a team in the server. But it's just depressing when I remember what you've just said there, that they're all just trapped in this fucked up contracts and actually aren't going to be getting anywhere near their market value probably for years to come.
I mean, look, I said again on that video that I was recording for timestamp it, Sam. The idea was that what can MIBR do? Are they overrated? Are they underrated? And I was talking about like if we'd been in that alternate timeline where maybe Fallen and had got his hands on Keserato and Yuri, and they had come in at the time when Tarek and Stewie went out. I think we're talking about a very different Counter-Strike landscape. Yeah, I think that team probably does go on to achieve great things, and we're all going, bloody hell, Fallen's done it again. I know that's what they wanted to do. Furia were absolutely adamant that they weren't going to sell at any price, and then they quickly did these follow-up contracts that basically lock these players down forever. The only way they will ever be able to leave Furia is when Furia want them to leave. That's it. I mean, their life is in a way. But since they brought in Henny, because remember, Furia were number 5 in the world, they were on the come up, people started respecting them, and then they had to go back to the drawing board. Well, since they brought in Henny, they've looked like a very different prospect. They're up to like 9th in the world rankings. I mean, like that's like a stealth thing that just happened in the background, by the way, because people have been distracted because of the pandemic. They're back in the top 10, guys. They're back in the top 10 teams in the world. They've been playing unbelievably well. And if you go look at the results in this tournament, these are all legit results. These are legit wins against legit teams. We're talking about 2-0s like over Liquid twice. Obviously, they beat MIBR. They came through the banana skin teams. They didn't drop a map to Bad News Bears. They didn't lose to Envy. They were absolutely straight fire until the final. And by the way, I watched GenG versus Furia. Legit a good game. Like, legit. I mean, it doesn't look it from the score, but there was, like, a lot of close rounds in this. There was some unbelievably good play. Yuri was insane. Like, probably one of the best series I think I've seen him have ever. It's like, yeah, they're back. Like, they've turned the fucking corner. They're a legit team. They have to be respected.
No, I agree. I mean, in some ways, the contract bullshit and the fact that they didn't just hop over to MIBR, like I'm sure some of them wanted to. I heard they basically would have done it if it wasn't for the org situation. It's actually allowed them as a team to sort of develop a little bit. And like I say, they can definitely still have their laws. Like I wouldn't rely on them to win a championship, even in this form. But like I said, one of the things I enjoy is they're just so exciting to watch play. Like I actually just genuinely enjoy a match that they play in. They match up so well against all the other teams. They actually have a decent amount of skill in the squad as well.
Yeah, for sure. And then obviously GenG, they won. They came out on top. They really surprised me. I mean, since they took off at DreamHack Austin, I was kind of like, eh. And I think they had a couple of like, dodgy results where I was kind of like, oh, it was just a flash in the pan. But no,
they were shooting like, Flashpoint.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. Yeah, I mean, like we were watching them in Flashpoint. Every time I called GenG to win a game, I mean, by the way, I think I had like a 10% prediction rate of the Flashpoint games. There were so many fucking weird, whatever. Sure. I was living in your world where it's like the prediction hell. But anyway, like. Every time I called them to win, they seem to lose. They had some like really weak performances again. Lost the color. So I was like, oh well, fuck that. Like that's just the GenG. It was just a one tournament thing. But then Road to Rio starts happening. They were legit, probably I mean, like not just by extension of winning it, but they look like the best team, I think. They had some like really good, really fun matches and like some real dominant performances on certain maps. You know, they were able to like overcome evil geniuses like we talked about in that series, had a legit win over Furia, you know, didn't trip up to Cloud9. Yeah, I actually I'm liking where this team is right now. I think they're a legit sleeper team. And when you look at the roster, you know, Automatic had some unbelievable series. He's actually back. He's been dug out of the hole, you know, not all the time, but he doesn't need to be. You've got Bentet finding his feet. I always knew as soon as the Krieg went out of the picture, because Bentet never really adapted to that game. He was still running around with an AK.
He's more of an eco in that sense, yeah.
Yeah. He wouldn't do it. Like he's like, look, AK for life, and like mad respect for that. But when Bentet was quiet during the Krieg net, the people were like, no, Bentet's never gonna do it. That fucking gun, that nightmare. It's over now. It's over now. And it's back to, can you bang people's heads off with an AK? Well, Bentet fucking can do that. You got Som as well. Remember, he was the MVP at Austin. Daps has done it again with Kusta. He's in his fucking head pulling the strings. And I know people are probably overhyping like the Kusta comeback quite a bit. But keep in mind, you know, this was a player that actually nobody was kind of like saying any good things about. Nobody respected. He'd kind of like, he was getting
He's
lot of...
He's played a lot of maps now and done pretty well. Like, I'd say it doesn't look like a total flash in the pan. I'll actually give this a little...
I said it last time we had a conversation.
It's not impossible he could actually have turned the corner on this one. I've seen enough games, you know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Last time we talked about it, I said it wasn't a flash in the pan. He's legit back. And keep in mind, reinventing himself as a rifler. He doesn't have to be amazing in this team, by the way. He just has to not be terrible.
Sure. No, that's the thing about the team was that when they were at Flashpoint, he was the only person who used to turn up, basically. I mean, at the end of the tournament, Bentet was when the Krieg was done, but that was like on the last, like, you know, like last match they played or something. So I'm with you. The fact that Automatic's the best player, bing, that's want that immediately. Kusta's retained his form, awesome. Bentet's coming around. That means that Som, this little fucking kid who just came out the end of a dick, yeah, he can afford to actually get his shit together. He can afford to have his ups and downs because he doesn't have to be the best player, does he? Like, he actually has, you like that one? So, you know, listen, he's already naked after that swim trying to beat all those other fucking sperm. So he's finally got in the egg. Anyway, the point is, give him a fucking rest. Let him just bed in. As it were, he's already done too much of that. You know?
He's absolutely fucking wrecked me with that one. Just come out the end of a dick. Yeah, he's doing really well. But like, what we haven't talked about as well is obviously Daps. Like, he's having the last laugh yet again. Like, he's having the last laugh every time. Daps kind of gets like backstabbed out the picture. He goes back to, you know, barn raising with his Amish friends, and you know, oh, that esports life. I don't know if it's for me. With its wicked ways, and now he's back, and he's built another team again.
Yeah, but you know where this is going. In about 3 months from now,
Tarek's joining.
He's going to call up late at night. Tarek, I just can't quit you, man. But just promise me not Stanislaw again. Tarek's like, I promise. He's like, why are you doing that? Don't worry about that. Some Turkish shit. You don't need to know about that.
My queen.
Exactly.
Daps.
And then next thing you know, once Stanislaw successfully sunk that ship, just as usual, he'll jump off at the last second and he'll just join the fucking GenG one and go, right, this is my turn.
Yeah, honestly, I hope it doesn't happen because, like, you know, we make a lot of jokes about Daps. He's a super cool dude. And he has, like, legit, like, the backstabbing meme gets fucking played up a lot in esports, but he is legit been fucked multiple times.
Of course.
Like, in ways that it's just not fair for what he's achieved in the game. So I'm
he has
happy
the
that
opposite of the Olaf Meister CS royalty thing, where he's not allowed to have one trip up. The second if he just keeps making semi-finals, they go, don't know if you're actually material to be on this top 5 squad in the world. And you're like, actually, he's really good at that. Like, nah, I think we're just going to take a gamble on this guy who sort of like does well and then tanks all the teams. It's like, well, sound. Fuck me then, I guess. And then he just goes, gets another team, brings that up, and then it just repeats like some mad... He is like some Sisyphean fucking nightmare, isn't it? It's like right when he gets the ball near the top.
Yeah,
back to the bottom again. I know.
So no, I'm hoping honestly that this is the team that sticks, because I like watching GenG. I like them. Again, they're one of those teams where it's like, I'm not gonna back them when they're playing the big boys. Probably not, no. But I'm gonna watch, and I know it's gonna be a lot of fun. And they're an exciting team, and they've come on leaps and bounds under Daps' leadership, so they deserve a lot of respect. super happy they were able to win out the region. Last region we'll talk about, we won't talk about Oceania. We're not going to talk about Asia. You know, obviously, you know what's been going on over there. Let's just quickly talk about Na'Vi over in CIS.
Man
what a
alive.
fucking disaster.
I'll just
this has
quote
been.
my favorite Bible scripture, also the shortest scripture in the entire book. Jesus wept. That's how I feel about this fucking. You look at the teams in this thing and you go, right, a bad day, what's that? Maybe lose the final? Nah. Don't even make the playoffs.
Put it this way, right? Okay. So pull up that clip of me saying Na'Vi are ready to dominate and be the #1 team in the world without any fear of anyone taking their crown, Jamie. Pull it up, Jamie. Obviously, I've been fucking wrecked again. I always feel responsible for this. I might send Simple a fucking apology because that's the classic Richard makes a bold prediction. 9 out of 10 of them will be right, but the ones that go wrong go hideously wrong. And this is what's happened to Na'Vi. Clearly, I'm in control. It can't be them. There is no reason why this roster should be getting 2-0'd by Virtus Pro. And then you go, well, it was a close series, wasn't it? All right, then. Who else did they fucking lose to? Didn't they
It's
lose
not
to
like
that
Virtus
fucking
Pro's good, though.
Seaman team?
That's the problem, isn't it? Yeah, these teams are all shit.
Yeah, I mean, like, keep in mind as well, by the way, yeah, that fucking that Seaman team just we're dropping those players that were maybe involved in some dubious stuff. Don't look, we're dropping them. And then they go out and they're beating fucking Na'Vi in these online games. Yeah, all right then. So that's pretty bad. They lost 2-0 to Hard Legion. Hard Legion.
Which sounds like a fucking shit porn fucking
I was gonna say
from the 90s of wrestling.
It's just unbelievable. Hard Legion, a Roman centurion themed gay porn movie. You've just lost to them. 2-0, Duncan. 2-0, like just blown out. And
you just
I think,
by the way, this is testing to the absolute limit Simple's new persona.
Oh.
You know, it must just be like, this is fine. This is fine.
No, but
Just
didn't he tweet something out like people should be scared of Na'Vi, lol, or something like that, like, and then like BRB lost to Hard Legion or something. Like, he's fucking obviously he's livid. He's fucking tamping, and it just makes no sense. I don't know how you go from Katowice to this. I like, yes, it's online again. Yes, it's online. Would this happen at LAN? I honestly think the way Na'Vi are playing, probably. They seem to be having this weird, it's this weird stumbling block they get locked into, where it's like, you know, they're losing close maps to teams that should never be in the maps to begin with, and they're throwing, you know, pretty sizable leads in some cases. It's just mistake after mistake. Now, I don't know, by the way, if this is some sort of like convoluted fear factor thing that's going on where all of the players are under the watchful gaze of Simple. So one mistake quickly becomes 2 mistakes, 3 mistakes, because you keep going, oh, fuck, I made a mistake. And, you know, he's going to be angry. And then like, because you're worried about that, you then fuck up again and again and again and again and again. You know, it's like the kid at a fucking school recital that like hits a wrong note on the violin and then just immediately pisses their fucking pants. Like, so then the nightmare just got worse. Because
I will say, if anyone's been watching that Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance, right, one element that they actually didn't do a good enough job, in my opinion, of playing up is like when they made all the excuses for why Michael Jordan was just an arsehole tearing everyone up constantly. Because listen, I get it. He had insane drive and he was the best player and he practiced more than anyone else. You know, basically he felt justified being an arsehole. What they didn't play up enough was part of what made that work is that then you had Scottie Pippen there as like the ultimate fucking good guy to be like, you know what, he doesn't mean it that way. Like, you know, he's just very competitive. And, you know, because what people don't get is one of the reasons why the Bulls teams were shit before Scottie Pippen got really good is exactly what you're talking about. Everyone talking about the team, everyone in the team knew this is about that guy, Michael Jordan, who is basically fucking Neo in the Matrix. He's going to spin around in the air upside down, score 45 points, and us shitter mortals are going to cost him the game. And every mistake we make is just yet another sign that we're nothing like him. He's fucking Jesus, and we're just all Judas to this guy every time we fucking fail. And that will absolutely cripple your mental state. Because in that scenario, Simple or Michael Jordan, they don't even actually have to say anything. The teammates know. And in fact, there's not even any real way out of that. Like if Simple tries to be nice and goes, you know what, guys, you did your best. They know they didn't. They know you dropped like a plus 25 and they just shit the bed. Like, so I agree with you. Like, if it goes against you in that scenario, the psychological strain of just existing in that team could be insane.
Mm. Yeah, and seriously, this is one of the downsides. Like, people go, oh, it must be nice to play with a Ziwu or a Simple. No, not if you are just a regular player. In fact, we've already seen that over at Vitality. We've already seen how much of a fucking struggle it is for some of these players to just admit that some fucking kid who's come from fucking nowhere is basically everything that the team does right. And in that he drops 50 frags on a map, and if they still lose, it means you are so below par, you are so dog shit. You have to live with that criticism, and then they go, but we do all the flashes for it. No, there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hide, and it's actually a really good comparison with the Michael Jordan stuff, because Michael Jordan goes out and drops like 50, and he still loses a game. Like, what the fuck are y'all doing? Like, what are you doing? What are you contributing right now? How can you not?
You can't even mind fuck yourself that you were doing something. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. So it is tough, but like, honestly, this is like so bad for Na'Vi. Do you think there's a world where they don't get to the major? I mean, could it realistically happen?
The problem is, you would think, since the other regional major ranking tournaments are presumably also going to have a CIS division and they can play them again, as much as it can definitely be a minefield playing random Russian people that you don't know online, and they certainly the skill in that region, I have to figure, just because of how easy the competition should be, that they eventually get through and they scrape into the major. It's not like the Fnatic one, where I'm worried that they started off on that footing and now they have to potentially play a good group of teams and beat some qualities. At least in theory, it shouldn't be possible for Na'Vi, but that's why actually the psychological component is big, because if they themselves believe that this is a big thing and that they're not going to get it, that's where I could see things just collapsing in, because that would obviously be the nightmare, that you'd go from one of the most dominant LAN runs we've seen at Katowice, so you don't even get to see him if the major's the next big LAN. Like, I don't want to live in that world.
Yeah. Right. So that's all the Road to Rio wrapped up. Well, we're at the 2-hour mark, so we're going to do viewer questions. For those who don't know, if you're a patron and you pay $50 or more, I know I say it every show, I'm going to rework the tiers. Never do, of course, just sit around did we just disconnect there?
Yeah.
Are we back? Oh, okay, good. So yeah, basically, if you give $50, you can ask or more. You can ask a question at the show. It can be about anything. I mean, Duncan will try and answer it to the best of our abilities. So let's get into it. We've got SunmaidRaisins. I think I have to do two. Do I do two questions for SunmaidRaisins this time? Yeah, because didn't we miss him last time or something? Anyway, upsets are very common with online matches we've seen recently, but which CSGO LAN tournament do you think had the biggest upsets, be it amount of matches won or the skill disparity? Hard to remember. I mean, I want to say, like, just it's fresh because it's fresh in the memory because of something else I'm working on. Cluj and Poker had some pretty fucking insane games. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, for a major.
Yeah. Remember, the
keep in
G2 team
mind-
almost made the final when they were like the nobodies. TSM blew it in the fucking first round of the playoffs to nip of all people. Yeah, I agree. There was a lot of crazy ones at that one.
Yeah, like following that story, and obviously, Envious won it. I mean, they weren't the favorites going in, because I remember when I picked them to win it, people were going, "Oh, no, the semi-finalists or whatever." I think.
A couple that come to mind is, one would be, I mean, you referenced it earlier with like prediction records for me. When I went 0-7 in the E-League Season 2 playoffs, where literally every single the one time, the reason I went 0-7 and everyone else went 1-6 is I also picked the underdog in the 7th game. And it was the one where Dignitas lost to SK. So that was one where every expert was wrong every step of the way. I remember even in the final, it was like the new Astralis with Glaive, and Device was the best player. And then they lost to the fucking Optic team. So there was one that was crazy. And that was all on LAN, obviously. Another one, I mean, a classic one I would pick out, actually, obviously somewhat infamous in your career, was that Acer Predator Masters, where it was like fucking Hellraisers or whatever won the shit in like that best of 7 final. And that was where actually like the Danish TSM, that was one of the only lands they bombed. They finished in like 8th place or something ridiculous. Back when, like they used to make top 4 for fun at that point in time. So, I mean, that was obviously a different setting. That was just in a fucking German guy's house surrounded by twats. But, not where you really ever want to be, except in a porn movie.
Yeah, except in a porn movie. I like because that works, because surrounded by twats, you see, it's good.
Yeah.
Anyway, SunmaidRaisins. If there was I'm a CS celebrity, get me out of here show, who would win? So
Red Eye.
Well, no. So listen, I don't even understand the premise of I'm a Celebrity. Like, I remember I wrote an
Yeah, I don't
article
know how
about
did they
it.
win or lose that game though.
Yeah, I wrote an article about it called Faded Stars, right? People can go look this up. It was just basically like, why is there a bunch of fucking Z-list celebrities eating insects for fucking attention, like on my television set? Like, that was, by the way, reality TV was the initial accelerator before social media for chronic mental illness, by the way. That was undoubtedly the first traces of
primed
lead
the
in
fucking land for people to be ready for that shit for sure.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, so I don't even understand the premise.
It's a
like,
public
what
vote, I think. So each
It's a
week,
public vote.
You just vote
the
someone
one
off.
with the one with the least votes get
Right,
voted
okay.
off, I think.
So who would win? So basically what you're saying is, because if you've ever seen those shows, you need to sort of pair being like likable, but you also have to be like a little bit cutthroat, as far as I remember, that you sort of like fuck over some. Am I right on that, Sam? Do you still fuck other people over and make political alliances
Kind
and
of.
shit?
Well, yeah, I guess. Nobody
Right,
wants
well,
you to just be
I think I know
vague
who
and
wins
bland.
this one then. Are you ready?
Go on.
Obviously, Fallen. He's a likable. Here's the thing I always say about Fallen. The fact that he's two-faced isn't even in itself a complete diss. Because here's the thing, right? Nikolie Lieholm has one face, and it's just a sourdough fucking shit used car salesman who should never be selling fucking insurance to your grandma, but tells her that the winter's going to be really cold and then nicks all the money, like in a video game, allegedly. Oh, please don't sue me. But no, the point I was making is like the difference is he's just a cunt. The thing about Fallen is, this will sound weird, but the ruthless element to him is just a part of him. It isn't that that's his real face. Like, actually, he can be one of the soundest people you'll ever talk to.
Yeah.
He can be a really cool guy. It's not that either's one of they're both parts of his personality somehow. So I actually think he would be the perfect person, looking even at his CS career right now, to be super likable. You still pull for him and think you should do well, but he would also just fuck over the other people enough that I think he'd win the game politically.
Yeah, for me, I mean, because it's like, it's sort of, if it is just a popularity contest, I mean, there are some players who obviously could do no wrong in people's eyes. So Fallen's a good shout. You can picture somebody like Get Right just like cruising, like not even doing any of the challenges, just sort of sat in a hammock, like telling everyone else what to do, and like everyone's like, he's so wacky. I love Get Right. No, I'm not eating the insects today. No, but you have to. Who's gonna vote me off? I'm Get Right. Fuck off. So I could see someone like that going on.
I've thought of one. I've just thought of one. Listen, since you have to do a load of shit no human should ever have to do, the obvious pick is fucking Dead Fox, innit?
I was going to say Dead Fox.
He'd be there, right, going, no more cockroaches, please. And they'd go, oh, fuck, I hope I don't have to do that challenge. He'd go, what challenge? I was hungry.
Yeah, I hope I don't have to chew on those giant kangaroo balls. Oh, no, you're not doing a challenge this week.
The challenge, oh no, fuck, I've been thinking about this all week long. The challenge, if you accept it, is you will be tied down and you must watch as a tarantula crawls across your face. Well, that's fine. It'll be taking about 2 weeks anyway, so I'll be fucking all right. We'll probably start to death before I get to my face.
The thing is, that doesn't even work as a joke.
I know.
Because he's got a small face.
Doesn't work, does it?
Giant head, though, so it's hard to find the face.
Yeah.
So it's going to be swinging around the head all the time.
Right, okay. Sam saved it. Sam's
Every
voice.
time you think you see it, it's like, it's always over that bloody hill, isn't it? It's cheeks or whatever.
Right. AliceTheAlchemist. For Thorin, due to the extraordinary circumstances that stifled production of Flashpoint's first tournament, where many of the cool concepts didn't get off the ground, will the second iteration be met with more or less scrutiny after the usual freebie of the first outings being memory hauled by the community? Would it be fair to assume that the next Flashpoint tournament will still be very experimental in that regard?
Yeah, obviously I can't say anything about the teams. That's on the owners to fucking get the checkbook out and to close some deals in the business room. I can't control whether they have the teams or not, but I can control the production elements and how good that is. So I will just say this, put it this way, if Flashpoint 2 isn't one of the best tournaments ever, literally ever, as in from everything on the production standpoint, all the stories we can tell, all the additional shoulder content, then I will actually consider it a personal failure. And I would go out and say this, there are so many times I came close to blowing up on people on Flashpoint 1, and I had to remember it is extenuating circumstances. Everyone's in a tough situation. You cannot do certain things. The difference is, as long as that does not exist as an excuse for anyone in Flashpoint 2, absolutely, I expect it to be a fucking unbelievable tournament where we'll do all the kinds of things we've promised or intimated we would do in the past one.
Well, as I said before, let me know if you need a +1. Like I'm down.
Yeah,
and
we can
back
figure
in the
something like that
game.
out. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Hope that answers your question, Alice. MissAlcoholic, after watching the documentary series The Last Dance on Netflix and thoroughly enjoyed it, do you guys have any recommendations on other documentaries that are worth watching? Can be sport or other things you liked. I'll probably keep mine to sport, but any
Let me
documentaries you've
think.
seen recently you liked?
Just in case people have never seen it, right? You don't have to like League of Legends, but one of the best esports documentaries ever made is one about the League of Legends team from like 3 or 4 years ago that had the player Dardoch in it, right? And it's called Breaking Point. Because the reason why, I'll sell people the line on it. They literally were trying to make one of those reality series that they do in League of Legends, where each week they follow you at LCS and they go, right, I went 0-2 this week, got to really block it up and have a serious chat. And then, oh, we went 1-1. Well, progress, you know, we're coming along. They were going to do one of those, right? But from the boot camp before the season onwards, it would gone so badly off the rails that this is one of rare times where I actually think Liquid 112 tried not to play the PR game. He actually said, fuck it, take all that footage and do what you want with it. And so the people behind the One Up GG or whatever the fuck they call that production studio made a documentary about a team collapsing in on itself and destroying itself. And as a result, like, you'll just never see this level of like behind the scenes footage, like people absolutely out there where some of their reputations have never recovered since. Like, those things are burned into people's minds. But just the fact that you got this rare sort of like artifact is unbelievable. So there's an esports one you can definitely watch. In terms of like real world documentaries, I'm trying to think what I enjoy in terms of like a really good doc. I'm a big fan of the Adam Curtis BBC documentaries, where what he basically does, it's right in my wheelhouse if you know what I like in esports. He basically goes back and he takes massive world events way before he was starting in the process. He's not filming any new footage typically for these. He just has the access to all the archives of the BBC film footage. So what he'll do is he'll tell an enormously broad story, like how, like, you know, fucking Saudi sheiks got intertwined with the American neocons to, like, you know, harvest the oil of that region while simultaneously playing geopolitics. He'll tell you some enormous story with a huge narrative, but because he has all this sick archive footage, it's super interesting, actually. Like, listen, take it with a massive grain of salt. It's just a guy giving his version of the story, but they're really entertaining, actually. I find them just like a great, like, little, just an interesting little thread to pull on, as it were. Just don't take it too seriously.
So what I'll do is I'll just recommend some of the better 30 for 30. It still blows my mind, by the way, how many people haven't seen a lot of these 30 documentaries by ESPN. Now, ESPN, a lot of their content's kind of, you know, gone off the fucking, you know, rails and is garbage. But they fund these documentaries, 30 for 30. They take a different documentary director who gets to tell a story about a sporting event that they want to, sort of in any format that they choose. And there's some amazing ones out there. So off the top of my head, Without Bias, is talking about Len Bias, who was the second draft pick in 1986. He went out celebrating, just as a kid, obviously. You know, it's a collegiate draft. He went out celebrating, did some cocaine, and died of a heart attack. And it basically didn't just change the whole landscape of the NBA coming out of the 80s, and it's a tragedy and an awful story in its own right. It actually was the start of the introduction of kind of cocaine being perceived to be a dangerous thing, not like just a fun party drug that people did, and the start of essentially the war on drugs and the cocaine-focused legislation, because you had this huge potential sports star now dying of a drug. It's a super interesting documentary. The Two Escobars is another amazing one, mind-blowing and, you know, heartbreaking. Again, obviously, it's about Pablo Escobar. Everyone is all up on that Escobar shit now because they've seen Narcos. But, you know, people don't actually know the history. Narcos, you know, it looks cool. It was pretty wild. But obviously, as well, there was the Colombian captain that got shot and murdered for scoring an own goal in '94, I think it was, for the US. Yeah, for the US World Cup. And it sort of talks about the scissored trajectories of their lives in the build-up to all of that and the lasting impact both people had on the country of Colombia. So that's a super interesting one. Fuck. I'll see if I can just think.
There was
of
one
one
about the
more.
Raiders, if you remember, one where they like the Al Michaels. What the fuck's the name of that guy?
Yeah.
The owner. There's kind of like the spirit of the Raiders, right?
Yeah, they had there was one called Straight Out of LA as well when the Raiders moved to LA, and I think Ice Cube's on that one. There was what's it called? It's something. Was it Once Were Brothers? Once Brothers. That is a fucking mind-blowing story. It's never really held up.
Oh, I know the one you mean, the basketball one, yeah. I know
Yeah,
the one you're
like
referring to
it's
there.
amazing because I don't even watch basketball anymore. But basketball has such just a richness of
It
stories.
just has so many good human elements, basically.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like you don't even have to appreciate basketball by the way to appreciate like something like The Last Dance or Hoop Dreams.
There's not even that
Total
much
Last
basketball in these shows if you watch them, by the way. Like that, if anything, it's just to stitch together the human stories. Like The Last Dance, you don't even need to know basketball to enjoy it. It's just behind the scenes shit.
Not at all. But anyway, they did one called Once Brothers, which was about the breakup of Yugoslavia. And obviously, Yugoslavia used to be, used to represent as one nation, but the divide between Croatia and Serbia obviously started to cause issues. And there was two players, Drazen Petrovic and Vlada Divac, one Croatian, one Serbian. They were best friends growing up. They used to play together on the Yugoslavian national team. They were both like phenomenally talented players. And then basically there's this one flashpoint incident over holding up the national flag of Yugoslavia rather than a Croatian flag, I think it was. And it just completely wrecked their friendship. And this one's never held up as like a great example of a 30 for 30. But it's actually like it's because it's not well directed or well shot or anything like that. It's not special. The story's just really interesting, and it sort of shows how politics and national identity can sort of irrevocably, break apart friendships in a sporting setting. So, hopefully one of those will float your boat. Absolutely do recommend it to Escobar. It's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen, I think. So we've got Jyse. Excuse the straightforward question. But why the fuck did Thorin live with Natu in Finland back in 2004? This question rose to my mind due to the references he dropped in Flashpoint segments with Havu players. So there you go. There's a war story.
Not really a good reason. Like, basically, this was in the really early days of esports. It was 2004. And this was just a period in time where I'd actually just got one of my first esports jobs that could pay vaguely well. When I say vaguely well, I mean like $1,000 a month. But at the time, you know what? If you're one of the weird things a lot of people don't know actually about a lot of Nordic countries is because a lot of people who live in the suburbs live in those tower blocks. They're pretty cheap actually. Like the rent in one of those can be like €400 a month. So that's actually within the budget. So at the time, what happened was I was friends with Nato anyway because he's an old school player. And then one day we were just having a conversation and he just said something like, well, I'm just in my apartment on my own. And I was like, all right. And he goes, if you want to pay half the rent, just come and stay for a few months. So I took a little sabbatical. I just went there for 3 months. I did it with a few other people as well. Like I went and stayed with the old school Canadian Steel, the one who was a mate of mine from Team 3D for a few months in Montreal for like a summer, etc. Which is the way to see the world and to experience it. And other than at the time, if you went to events, you literally just went to the event, went to the hotel, went to the convention center, went to the event, back on a bus, back on a train home, and you never saw the place. So it was just a cool way to experience some other cultures in a way that, I mean, I'm not going to go into details here, but I wasn't someone who took like foreign holidays. Like my holidays were in a fucking caravan or something. So to me, it was cool to be able to go and check somewhere else out for a few months.
Yeah, I think that was when I
things were
first...
right up my alley because I just eat kebab, drink fucking vodka, just sit and play video games all day, and then just go, good. And that's about it. That's about all they do. And lose to Russia, except in wars.
No, I mean, I think it was when you got back from Finland, sort of when I first became aware of you. I think I was kind of on the come up there, and that was it's crazy that I sort of still vaguely remember you living out in Finland all that time ago. But there you go. So that's Jyse's question. Koekenpan, do you guys think this is Glaive's retirement, really? 3 months seems like a long period to me, especially given the fact as an IGL he has to keep up with the meta, develop strategies, etc. So I'll just jump in on that. I don't think he's retiring. I don't think Glaive would go out now and certainly not bow out like this. I honestly do think that there's something else going on. And that's not called Glaive a liar. Obviously, you got to play along with your employer's PR and all the bullshit. I think there's something more going on behind the scenes, something we're not privy to. I think Glaive is somebody, by the way, that let's not forget, he understands the privileged position he is in, perhaps more than anybody else. He had huge health problems after he'd been cast out of the scene. We shouldn't know who the fuck Glaive is, by the way. Because after that weird Copenhagen Wolves meltdown over whether or not he wanted his girlfriend on stage, the Danish scene said enough is enough with this cunt. Fuck this. Nobody wanted to work with him. He wasn't even getting into mediocre lineups anymore all of a sudden. He was considered a fucking party boy, you know, a guy who just didn't have the right attitude or aptitude to be a professional sports person. Then unfortunately for him, his lung collapsed. And then after that, he had another relapse of a collapsed lung. He was laid up in hospital. He was laid up in bed just thinking about, like, even if I fucking make it through this, am I ever going to be able to play again? So when he got his opportunity to play in Astralis, that is why his work ethic is unparalleled, unprecedented. That is why that team worked so well. That is why the Glaive era is what takes them to the next level. And all the things Duncan said at the start of the show about Glaive being essentially the identity of Astralis is true. Because that perfect storm of, not only was it his last chance, it was his last chance, but also with so much potential to go on and be this dynastic team that they've got. And he seized it with both hands. Now, after you've done something like that, you don't fucking bow out and retire. No, you've obviously got that hunger. That's why I don't even necessarily buy the burnout story. Because, like, yeah, Glaive works incredibly hard. Yeah, he deserves a break. But this is a guy who fucking grinds like no one else. This is a guy whose work ethic is right up there, almost unprecedented. So he's not retiring, and he'd be insane to retire, because even if it's the end of his Astralis career, he is the go-to, he is the magic man.
I could probably, literally, no joke, get him more money than any player except maybe Simple or Nico. Like, he would be number 3 on the list. Like, if I want to get one of these Flashpoint teams a player, and I say, I can get you this guy tomorrow, just open your checkbook and write the number I tell you to write, he would be, like, top 3 of value. That's how important this guy is.
Oh, no doubt. Like, and again, when you're looking at teams like, you know, obviously FaZe clearly don't want to spend the money with a story. DK just broke. We'll talk about that next week. You know, but like, if they ever did, like, he's the guy, right? He's the fucking go-to guy. There's nothing this guy can't do. So yeah, I mean, like, there's no way he retires. I mean, even if the next team he played for, assuming he doesn't come back to Astralis, was a stain on his legacy, it would be a very lucrative stain, and it wouldn't even be that much of a stain. It'd be like one of those stains you only see in a certain light. No one would give a fuck. What Glaive achieved in his time with Astralis is, like, unprecedented. So yeah, he's not going anywhere. He's not out of the scene. J-Dubs, Thorin tweeted the other day about how VP can sign talent other CIS squads can't. 1 or 2 years ago, you mentioned VP having some ownership or leverage over Na'Vi, and now VP signed a player from Pro 100, which is a Zeus project.
I'll be back in 1 sec. I heard the question, but
Yeah. Do you think, buddy? I'm guessing someone's at the door or something. So listen, I don't know what Duncan said in regards to that, but I will just say it is a murky world in the CIS region, and I don't know if there is any leverage there. I mean, from what I gather, back in the ES4 days, Virtus Pro and Na'Vi, when Na'Vi when all of that broke apart and Na'Vi broke away from it, there's evidence there to suggest it wasn't actually done as a nudge, wink, wink. It was actually acrimonious. There was actually, a lot of shit going on behind the scenes. So I don't know about that. All I'll say is, though, when you talk about conflict of interest, it's one thing to talk about your Astralises and your blasts and all of this. Good luck ever opening the can of worms that is fucking Russian conflict of interest or CIS region conflict of interest. Because if you ask too many questions and ever expose a serious conflict of interest, you are at a real risk of a fucking, a double tap to the back of the head.
I would just say this. In a lot of other cases, even the NIP case is a good example. It doesn't matter what the org has done, someone eventually comes out. I've never heard of that happening in the CIS region.
No.
Never ever heard of it on the level we're talking about. Because that's the reason why I made that tweet. How can the Virtus Pro org, which, by the way, hasn't been relevant for ages, even business-wise hasn't made big moves, how can they, to the shitty ex-Vanguard core, repeatedly sign up-and-coming players? Meanwhile, Na'Vi, who are crying out to put someone next to the GOAT to just literally start shipping championships back to CIS, they can't do it. They're supposed to be above VP on every level. So that's the thing. I don't know what it is on that one. I'm not actually making a specific intimation. I'm not sure who it is who has the power behind the scenes that can do this, why Na'Vi doesn't have it for that matter. But something goes on in that region that doesn't make any sense at all to me.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting as well. People like talking about Zeus. Like Zeus is just another guy that skated his entire career, just skated, got away without being valid, valid criticism and all bullshit that was going on. Pro 100, owning a team, owning a fucking betting website. Like Zeus has done it all. Like, by the way, he's not driving that fucking sports car based on salaries and winnings. Put it that way. It's ridiculous, but whatever. Anyway, last question, Jerky's Minion. What is your reaction to the Staffordshire Uni of London's tweet shown here since they have deleted? This was a tweet made by the Staffordshire University of London and London Digital Institute, where it said, soon, working in esports will require a university degree. Find out what the future will look like at ESI Digital Summit with our panel of Dr. Bobby Fletcher, Head of Department of Games and Visual Effects for them, James Fraser Murison, Director of Learning and Esports Teacher at Queen Mary's College, Rachel Gowers, the Director of the university that was holding the panel, and Josh Williams, founder of the NUL, whatever the fuck that is. So basically, I'll just tell you what I think. I mean, it's absurd, isn't it? It's an absurd premise. The key, this is what all of these fucking money-grubbing cunts will never accept, right? That understanding esports comes from having worked and experienced esports, from knowing people, from seeing trends. You can't just rock up with a fucking... It's not that type of industry. It's like, for example, say baseball, right? Like, you don't just go to university, get a degree, and then go straight into the major leagues as a fucking GM or whatever. No, you have to fucking work your way up, do some youth coaching. You learn the game, and in doing that, you learn how to spot things like intangibles, trends. Maybe when a player's about to bust out, maybe get a cheap signing or a good trade. Things like this. You learn, and you only learn from being in the trenches, and that's what these cunts will never accept, because it's the one thing they cannot retroactively go back and synthesize. They can't go back to the beginning of esports. They can't put 15 years in the industry, but they can mindfuck you into thinking that their credentials are worth something if you let them. Well, just don't let them. The idea you need a college degree to work in esports, over say 15 years working in esports, absolute ludicrous premise. And you'll notice, of course, what do you have to do to get these degrees? Oh yeah, you got to pay for them, do you? It's a fucking grift.
Yeah, first of all, the idea that person's title includes the phrase esports learning, that's a fraud. That person cannot, it is literally impossible that person could have the qualifications necessary to have that role. So even if that role exists, it's brand new and there is no basis to it whatsoever. He's basically the first person to do that, right? That's outrageous in itself. Then there's the angle, as you said, about paying to get a degree. First of all, it's just fear mongering. They're literally telling you, oh, you want to get into esports, do you? Won't be doing that without a degree. What? Why don't you just say, prepare yourself for your esports career, get a head start in your esports career?
Exactly.
This would be pushing
Would have no issue with any of that.
Exactly. But you're instead trying to scare someone with the idea they won't get their dream job, so they better come to you. And if people don't know, since this is a university in the UK, the universities in the UK are some of the worst in the world for how they charge the fees. Because the government claimed that the whole point of the max fees was that would create what was going to be considered a hierarchy. So only the best university would charge, I think it's like £9,000 a year. What happened was every single one of them just charged it, the maximum. So as a result, to get this particular thing that we're talking about here probably will cost you, I'll give it for people in euros and dollars so they know it. Let's say like 60,000 euros or $80,000, $70,000. That's what you're probably going to have to pay for an esports degree that has yet to show you can do anything in esports, because it doesn't really exist as a real metric. Instead, as people pointed out, first of all, I think the college system's a scam anyway. But if you want to go to college, here are the degrees to take: journalism, English language, fucking business management, maybe economics. Like, these would be the actual fields, maybe video production. These would be the fields where the same degree would get you way further in esports than the one that says you have an esports degree. Not least because, without blowing our own horns, about the only degree worth having in esports would be if people like me and Richard literally became university lecturers tomorrow. As far as I can tell, we have no plans to do that. So the entire thing's just a fucking ghoulish nightmare that really just says more about how fucked modern culture is than the idea that esports is going mainstream.
So there we have it. That's all the questions. We've done a long show today, over 2.5 hours. So thanks for your stamina, Duncan and Sam. You've done a great job there. I don't know if you just want to play the fucking red eye thing at the end. By the way, if you do, just cue it up. But anyway, obviously, shout out to the sponsor. .com, great sponsors. If you want to sign up, I recommend you do. You can go to .com/RLS and you can place bets on esports events in a safe, ethical environment. They're not throwing up all those stupid bullshit games that we're all talking about again. You know what's going on, guys. So yeah, go support them. They're a great sponsor. And of course, the patrons that brought the show back from the dead, our $100 patrons, Jerky's Minion, AliceTheAlchemist, Madam, Reykjavik on Steam, and our $50 patrons, Benakagi Assassin, Koekenpan, Butt Pounder 420, Carve, Colin Penny, Cathal, Flacksmith, J-Dubs, Jyse, Lipscomb Davis, Madsen, Marcus Kyumpar, MissAlcoholic, Sad Sawar, Sigo, SunmaidRaisins, TC Owens, Tobias Bernasconi, Watchdog, and Zinged. Thanks for your constant support, especially in these difficult times. That was By the Numbers. We'll see you next show, and until then, take care.
A puppet on a string.
Now that's what I call Red Eye.
All that she wants is another baby.
Listen to Red Eye sing songs from through the ages.
I got the key, I got the seat. I got the key to a world cyber game.
By now, available at no stores while stocks last.